Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Corlick from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it. Hey everybody, it's Adam here. Welcome to the Figured Out cast for September 2020, the worst year of all time, and it just got a little worse. Rob is still here. Rob, why are you hanging around like this? What is the problem?
I'm like
Do you not know how to end a Skype call?
Bad rash, man, that won't go away entirely. Even though you don't see me, I'm still there.
Well, okay, at least he admitted it. In all seriousness, Rob, he just had a birthday, so he keeps finding a reason to stick around. So I felt I owed him. I had to hook him up for his birthday, but you know, there are people that want you to stick around like indefinitely. We'll see about that. It depends on if he ends this Skype call or not. I don't know. I don't know what he does when I'm not around him, so I don't know. Other than the fact that he's got a wife and a girlfriend at the same time who happen to be the same person, which is confusing, but hey, man, more power to you.
Well, I've got a boyfriend now, too. You've seen Limited Run James. It's my boyfriend.
Yes. There are people that are... I think, like, there was somebody suggested that should be, like, your new Twitter handle or something, is Limited Run James. It's true, dude. That's how you pronounce it.
Have to have a Twitter first.
You do. So just to get this stuff out of the way, today, as always, we'll be talking about a whole host of different subjects. They will be in the description, by all means. There will be time code. Click around, pick whichever ones you like, or just listen to the whole thing if you want to. Today, however, we have a very unique show. This has never occurred, really, in the entire time I've ever done this. Rob, would you like to explain to everyone what is so unique about today's show?
So, as many of you know, this Figure It Out cast is a Patreon-backed podcast. If you support content creators like Mr. Korolick here, you can go onto Patreon and donate some money monthly, and there are different tier levels, and one of the tiers for this channel is to be able to join this podcast as a guest. I have done that multiple times before in the past, and this month we have 2 people that have chosen that tier level to join us.
Yes, that is correct. In fact, there was a time actually where I used to have 2 other guest stars. It was Chip and Remy used to be on this. For 4 months. It was all
the good old days.
The good old days, back before Rob ruined it. No, just kidding. But this time it's going to be unique because there's 4 people on the same podcast. However, the format of today's show will be slightly different because of people's work schedules and, frankly, time zones. So the first guest will be up here in a second right after we finish the intro, and then the second guest will cap off the show towards the end. So just to add on to one other thing that Rob said, again, like he mentioned, this is a Patreon-backed podcast, so if you want to join the Patreon, you can get early access to videos, you can pick subjects on this podcast, you can even be on the podcast, and I highly recommend taking a look over there if you want to support the channel at all.
Do it.
But thank you. Without further ado, anything else you want to say before we get started?
Nah, let's do it, man. All right, we are here with the first guest on the Figure It Out cast for this month. Mr. Oliver Clare is joining us as a Patreon backer. How you doing, Oliver?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, man. It's good to actually get another one of the shout-out names actually show up on here. So big shout-out, of course, to Oliver. Thank you very much for being a backer. Very much appreciated. And you actually had a long list of subjects, and he was under the impression this wasn't going to take us that long. I'm like, no, man, this is like 7 hours of content, so we had to cut it down a little. But I'm actually kind of excited to talk about these because Rob and I, you guys will see in a second, but Rob and I are obviously based in North America, so we don't really always have the European perspective on some of this stuff. So I think that this discussion could be rather interesting. So, Rob, why don't you get us started on the first subject there on the list, unless you don't have it in front of you, and then I'll do it.
So Oliver is interested in discussing the difference in kind of conflict between PAL and NTSC video formats, specifically in gaming, regarding the problems that arise for import collectors and gaming enthusiasts when wanting to play games on various regional consoles. So, Oliver, would you like to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. And just, again, thanks for having me on. Just been a fan of the channel for a while, and thanks very much. Yeah, so...
thanks for being here.
Rob's
taking all the credit now. This is his show. I'm the background.
Yeah, okay, so I live in Ireland, which is obviously in Europe, and it's in the PAL region and has the same power standards as the UK and so on. And yeah, like Rob, I was talking to Rob earlier in the week, and just I was telling him that myself and my wife are at the planning stage of building a house right now, and I'm planning to have an office in the house, and kind of putting way too much thought into how I want my gaming setup to be. Like, as kind of Adam or anyone who's had the misfortune of having a conversation with me on the Discord probably knows by now, because I just kind of hound people.
Well, before you go too far down that rabbit hole, I just want to say, just so you guys have like a mental awareness, if you watched a couple of episodes when Rob first started showing up here, like on this podcast, he just Oliver's first subject ever as a backer was just list which consoles you have and like how likely you would be to keep them connected. Like, that was it. It wasn't in depth. That took us, I think it was like 47 minutes. So that's kind of my point. Oliver's subjects, they seem small, but they're huge. Anyway, so
there's a dirty joke in there somewhere, but I'm not going there.
all I'm saying is you're very good at coming up with that stuff. And yes, he has been talking about this like pathway to getting all of his stuff set up. So that's why almost all of his questions seem to surround like, well, how would you do it? So yeah, I'm very curious to actually hear you explain it.
It's completely a one-way street. Like, there's no wisdom going in the other direction. It's all just take. But yeah, so it's just funny because getting my Nintendo 64 was actually kind of my kind of entry point into this rabbit hole. Just when I think I tried to plug it into a modern HD TV with composite, and you can kind of imagine how that looked. And then that got me down this rabbit hole. And recently, now, at this point, I kind of feel like I've gotten a good grasp on what I want to get modified and how to get the best AV output out of different consoles, like from watching all your videos and My Life in Gaming and some other similar channels. But then recently, I tried to get my Nintendo 64 modded for RGB, and it turned out that I had the specific PAL model which was completely incompatible with any kind of RGB mod. And then I was like, oh, I haven't even been thinking about, NTSC PAL differences, 60 versus 50 hertz. I've kind of been thinking about getting RGB or HDMI out of some of the older systems, but I just hadn't considered that side of things at all. So, I mean, I guess maybe to get started, like, I mean, what do you, when we're talking about NTSC versus PAL, I suppose, are we really talking about the console hardware or like individual games in terms of software, the TV? So when it comes to I'm not going to claim to be any sort of expert on the history of why those decisions were made. In fact, as my understanding, it mostly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it mostly boils down to just the video refresh rate of NTSC versus PAL at the time. NTSC typically would run at 60 hertz, which we now would refer to more as 60 frames per second, and 50 hertz was more what PAL stuff was running at, which was basically 50 frames per second. That also had to do with another aspect of video frequency. So the only time in North America anyway, and correct me Rob if I'm wrong on this, is that we were never really exposed to PAL as a format except for those rare occasions where we were trying to import something. And we kind of talked about this, I think, on a previous podcast. There isn't a great PAL import scene in the US or in Canada. It's just kind of like, because there's only a handful of games that ever came out there that people seem to like really actively want to try and bring over. I'm kind of the freak because I like to bring over like all the exclusives because it's like they're all English language content for the most part, so I kind of want to include them. But they can create certain problems. But to separate these issues, there's PAL and NTSC, there's 50 hertz and 60 hertz, and then there's power differences. So it's like three things you have to get through to try and use European content, and that's also doesn't include possible language issues because, like I said, usually in English, but not always. Whereas with Japanese stuff, you kind of go into it knowing, well, it's probably not in English, but everything else is most likely going to work with my video standard and my power standard, even if it's slightly off. So, yeah, I mean, Rob, what else would you kind of say about that?
So in my experience, like I do have a good amount of European games in my collection, mainly centering on the Master System and the Genesis, which, to be fair, are a lot more import friendly and kind of region friendly. Compared
not
to
perfect by any means.
Not perfect. I mean, if you get Mega Man Wily Wars and put it in to a Genesis here, you're still gonna, it's still gonna run at 50 hertz. It's still gonna run.
Let me explain that to real quick to people here. So, it's not like when they were. In my understanding, Oliver, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you were to buy a PAL game and you're running it at 50 hertz, you're not noticing that it's like running in slow motion. But to us, if we try to play it on a North American console and it tries to play back at 50 hertz, we'll either not get proper video display or it simply will run in like almost slow motion. So often that type of thing has to be corrected. That's why Mega Man Wily Wars is a perfect example of a game where people in North America actually knew of it because it was this big, Mega Man collection for the Mega Drive and Genesis that we never actually got. And so if you imported it, it was region locked. And even if you got past that, you were stuck with it running slow. So modders actually decided to make repro carts that fix both of those issues. It runs in 60 hertz and it runs region free. So that's the type of stuff we deal with. A lot of games, I think they got smarter about this as they went on. Like the Dreamcast, for example, there's, I think, 32 European releases that North America never got. And every single one of them has an option right when you boot it up to run the game in 60 hertz right away. And once you do that, boom, you're past that problem. It tends to boil down more to the console of that era and the game software therein.
And was it sort of around that era, like the Dreamcast, PS2 kind of era, where that, at least from a point of view of the AV side of it, like the speed and the power settings, did it stop making a difference around that time, like kind of Dreamcast, PS2 sort of era?
I'm not 100% sure on that. That's the first time I would have noticed it, but also age is a factor. I wasn't exactly importing Mega Drive games when I was a kid. All I know is that when it comes to the Dreamcast specifically, they could patch it out essentially just by when you start the legit game, it'll just ask you like which one you want. The GameCube, however, doesn't do that. The GameCube is region locked, and even if you get past its region coding, it very rarely seems to offer any sort of option to run the game in 60 hertz. I'm not sure I've ever even seen it. The handful of European imports I have will run at 50 hertz, and it takes something like Swiss to like correct what I'm going to call a problem. The original Xbox, though, was not region free, so you have to mod it, and once it's modded, I'm not even sure if it's just running it the correct way or if the mod is actually repairing it. I don't know how else to put that. And the PS2, on the other hand, also not region free, but if you get past its region coding, it's like the GameCube where it runs it in the wrong display. So sometimes it'll run the games in black and white. Sometimes it'll run the games like the screen is off center. It's like dropped below the primary part of the center on a North American television. The issues seem to vary depending on what console and usually what the game like issue is. It seems like some of the older stuff like the Genesis or Mega Drive, whatever, like if you get it to run, it just runs slower. And then different stuff, it's like the frame is off, and other stuff the colors are off, and actually they're not even non-existent, they're black and white. But it seems like I think from basically the Xbox 360 onward, they essentially phased that problem out. While region coding was still a thing, I don't think there was any European games for the Xbox 360 where if I tried to run them, I would be getting those kinds of issues.
Yeah, and certainly you would never have any reason to like import a current gen console for that reason. Like at this point, it's well and truly, a problem for.
Yeah, it was exactly. It was more of a problem historically, but that's again from the perspective of Americans who were like importing this stuff. I'm curious what your perspective is in the opposite end. Like, do you like PAL? Is it your PAL?
That's terrible.
Bad joke of the day. There you go.
Yeah, well, look.
I think we just killed Rob with that one. Sorry.
Oh, man, are you guys still talking? I forgot.
Well, I think if you have, as I said, if you have a region-free modded PAL console, and you can run your PAL carts at 60 hertz. But I think, again, it can be like a game-by-game issue. So like if gameplay was originally adjusted in that specific game for a PAL conversion and it was done well, presumably then it would run too fast when you're running your region-free console in NTSC mode, and then vice versa. The NTSC carts would probably play too slow once you switched it to if you were playing them in PAL mode. So, I mean, I noticed it just when I was looking at kind of Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo era consoles. But actually, just when you bring that up, you know, you did your generational retrospective videos a few years ago, and I actually find it's quite difficult to find those comparison videos for that generation. So I was wondering, is there any? I can't imagine that there's PAL consoles of those kind of early second gen consoles. You know, like your Magnavox or your Atari or your Coleco. Or Mattel.
No, some of them do have PAL counterparts. I couldn't pretend to. I didn't grow up then. I mean, that was who. I'm trying to remember who the other company was. Philips. I think Philips was responsible for some version of the.
Or they don't own Atari. Who do they own? They own Philips own Magnavox, or they did own Magnavox.
Yeah, so they did like a version of. I think they called it like the VIC or something.
Yeah,
but beyond that, I'm not sure. So you can get PAL composite and that kind of stuff to work here through various means. I've never found a way to get PAL RF to work here. Like that requires some serious tools that would have no point to ever be used here. But yeah, that's a whole nother thing is when you talk about the video cable standards, like you guys had SCART. We never had SCART. And I've said that a billion times in videos before, so I'm not going to go down that once again. But it's, you know, people look at SCART because we're forced to use adapters to, you know, connect SCART to a television. You're essentially letting that box do the conversion correctly instead of plugging it in directly, like you learned when you stuck composite in directly.
Yeah, that was a bad day.
Yeah, is right now anyway. But personally, I've started using the Eon Super 64 HDMI. The video quality is fantastic out of the thing, especially if you pair it with an M Classic or something like that.
Yeah, we had S Video here. I have two TVs in my setup, so I'm working off the HDMI inputs, and then I have a CRT that has a couple of SCART inputs and an S Video and composite in as well. See, an option, yeah.
I have a suggestion for you, dude. Why don't you just import a Japanese N64?
I think that's. I mean,
they're like $3 in Japan. Like, you know, I mean, granted, you have to find it at the right place to do that, but like, they're not expensive in Japanese console. But that actually kind of goes. Again, we're going to keep using the term rabbit hole, but it goes further down into that because not only do you have to debatably make some of your collection kind of useless, you have to wonder like. I guess I have a question for you as someone who you live in a PAL territory. Like, when you know that your versions of games from that era are running 10 frames per second slower, or in some cases like GameCube games where they're denied the high definition modes, or Xbox where they're denied the high definition modes. Well, okay, that one's console specific, but in those cases, are you ever sitting there going like, dude, I need to get the American versions of these games?
No, I mean, like, we didn't realize that growing up. You know, that wasn't.
That's what I'm asking you now as an adult.
Yeah. To be honest, I would only really go to this length because, like I said at the beginning, we're moving house. I'm kind of in a unique position where I can put some thought and a little bit of money into getting it the way I want it. I probably wouldn't go to this length if it was at any other point in time, if that makes sense. But I can do it now. So like that. So so I'm interested in doing that. But like, yeah, growing up, it wasn't. We were kind of vaguely aware that the NTSC versions were better. Like that was something that you would see discussed in like in video game magazines in like PlayStation magazines and stuff like that. Like it's something that we were kind of vaguely aware of, but like not to the length that we'd be aware of now retrospectively. And just when you talk about Japan, is Japan NTSC basically the same as American NTSC, or
do you want to skip over to that subject now?
Well, sure. I mean, you've been to Japan a lot to,
okay, then we're officially moving on to that subject, everybody.
Sure.
So that subject, sure. Okay, you wanted to talk about NTSC-J and then Japanese game hunting in general.
Yeah,
so
sure.
your question, it sounds like, just is NTSC-J different from NTSC-U?
Yeah, and like, are there any good reasons to incorporate an NTSC-J console into your setup, like other than stuff where it's a unique variant like the Famicom, or stuff like the Pippin where it's your only realistic option for picking one up? Like, are there any consoles that kind of optimize in their Japanese iterations?
Like, would I get a Japanese Nintendo Switch instead of an American one?
Yeah.
In that particular case, no. But something like the N64, it's kind of indifferent because it's essentially the exact same guts. It's just literally the only difference is that piece of plastic that's blocking the cartridge port. It's unfortunately kind of console specific, but as far as the video standard is, as I understand it, is identical. The difference, though, the small difference that unfortunately most importers don't really seem to realize is the power standard is slightly different. So Japan runs its electronics at 100 volts, whereas you guys are like 220V, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys, that's where you run into those problems where it's like, oh, I imported something from Europe and I toasted it, or you guys import something from us and you brick it, or whatever. With Japan, we're able to just bring stuff over, plug it in, and it works. But our power standard is slightly different than theirs. Like I said, they're 100 volts. We're basically 110, sometimes 120. That small difference is enough within tolerances for the thing to keep working, but over time, it's slowly chewing away at whatever the electronic device is. So even though if you're intending to use something for prolonged use, at least here from Japan, it's recommended to have some sort of like little step down to converter to just kind of adjust for that variance. But I mean, that can take many years before it causes any sort of significant issue. But for those who recognize the problem, it's kind of good to head it off. Aside from that and region coding, no, there's really nothing preventing you from saying, hey, I'd rather just have a Japanese N64 because it's cheaper or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, for me, looking at my kind of console setup, I've got 3 Japanese consoles running. I've got a Japanese Orange Spice GameCube that's region modded. That's kind of my main GameCube now. I've got a Neo Geo CD from Japan, and but the big one, I mean, it kind of ties into your topic. You wanted to talk about like Japanese game hunting a little bit, kind of the advantages of that. I mean, 2 words: Sega Saturn. I mean, if you're
yeah.
I mean, if you're going to talk about the advantages financially of collecting for Japanese games for a Japanese system, it's got to be the Sega Saturn. The price difference in NTSC American and NTSC Japan versions of games is staggering, just because it was so much more successful there. It outsold the N64 there, and so when I got into the Saturn, I bought myself a Japanese Saturn just because I knew that the vast majority of the games that I'm going to get for my collection are going to be Japanese versions of these games because they're so much cheaper. I don't want to pay $200 for Panzer Dragoon Zwei. I'm going to pay $30 for the Japanese version. And
what's funny about that? Just to pick, to just tail on that one for a second. All right, when it comes to the American prices, Panzer Dragoon Zwei, perfect example. $200 here. $30 in Japan, so it's like almost, not quite 10 times, but almost 10 times. Yet it's only like $30 in Japan if you buy it on eBay. If you actually go to Japan, it's like $3.
Pennies.
Essentially, it's like you're paying eBay is selling it to you for 10 times what you're getting it in Japan for, and yet you think you're getting a good deal because you're getting it for like 1/10 of the American price. So the difference is astonishing. Anyway, sorry, Rob.
But the good thing about the Saturn is it's one of the most import-friendly consoles, because by putting a whatchamacallit, an action replay cart in it, it unlocks the region. So, you can play Japanese, you can play American. I think you can even play European games on it.
Yeah, you can.
I had a Clockwork Knight 2 from a PAL region for the Saturn, and fine.
I have. That's actually an interesting point, because I have all but one of the European exclusives that were released in Europe, obviously, or the ones that we didn't get, I should say. And only one of those, there's 32, I have 31, and only one of those 31 had issues running on the Saturn in North America just due to like video frequency. It would only run at 50 hertz. The others all ran in 60 hertz. So that kind of tells you a lot about Sega's ability anyway to, at least from the Saturn onward, they were kind of proactive when it came to the PAL versus NTSC thing. Which is kind of interesting, drawing that background. Although, I'm sorry, Oliver, was this actually what you were asking about? Or were you asking about, like, electrical standards and things like that? Not so much, like, what do we recommend buying?
Well, sure, both. I mean, you've been to Japan a bunch of times. I mean, what are some good places to go if you don't fancy dropping €1,500 on an FM10 Smarty on eBay?
I've never found one over there, so that's a bad particular example. I'm on the hunt.
But if you want that Casio Loopy, he can hook you up.
Casio Loopy, I got you for days. But the FM Town Smarty, all I've found ever for it is one game, which I bought, and a controller, which I also bought. But the console itself, it's a ghost, man. I've never, ever seen it. I've never seen one for sale, let's put it that way.
I've never been to Japan, but I just kind of pictured that it almost seemed like you could just walk into a random book off and you just see an FM10 Smarty sitting on a shelf. But
unfortunately, not that particular one, at least not in my experience. But to try and answer your question here, though, it really just depends, because there's two different philosophies on this. And I want to make this very clear. Because I got some flack from some friends of mine and vice versa over this. So as you mentioned, I went to Japan many times. I got sent there a lot, and a lot of the time was my time to do whatever I want. But because it was becoming so frequent to me, I was going like out of my way to go out to the random areas of Japan. Like I would take the train for like 2 hours, and I would get to some little, suburb where gaijin never goes. Gaijin means outside person, foreigner, essentially. Where basically like where dudes like us would never be. And I go to like a book off or a hard off. And like, there's when you're going to find gold. You're going to find all these games that the locals are not buying, because retro gaming in Japan is mostly a thing that tourists do. It's not really stuff that the locals care about. The only reason it's there is because they know it has some value, so they just kind of maintain it. But the thing that people always say is like, why don't you go to like Akihabara? Akihabara is where tourists go. So the prices there are eBay prices. And the only reason people like it is because it's like, oh wow, a Famicom for only like $40. I'm used to seeing them on eBay for like $100. Whereas you go to that same like hard off I'm talking about, they can't get rid of them. They're like $3. And, but the reason I got flack for that is because not everyone has that opportunity to just go to Japan like that many times, because if you go there like once, that's like the thing where everybody's like, that was my life goal. I got to go there once for 2 weeks. I didn't want to spend an entire day going to some random suburb just to look for video games. And that's a completely reasonable standpoint. So basically the reason I express all of that is it depends on your goals. If your goal is just to buy video games, if you're like, that's why I'm in Japan, then that's the way to do it. But if you're like, I'm here for the whole tourist thing and maybe one day I'll look for video games, that's when you go to Akihabara.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Does that answer?
Yeah. I'm trying to convince my wife to go on a trip to Japan as soon as this pandemic's over. Could be waiting a while.
It's amazing. I can't recommend.
Yeah, he went too. He went too.
Yeah, I went last summer for the first time, and I was bolstered by a lot of the knowledge that Adam kind of put forward in terms of game hunting. But, as Adam said, like, I wasn't there just to hunt video games. Yeah, I wanted to, and I was going to take advantage of that, and I certainly did, but I didn't have, 3 hours to go out to the middle of, Kansai and just, like, just go game hunting at some, like, obscure little book off. I did go to book offs all through Osaka and Tokyo, but I also did go to Akihabara. I did go to, was that Dotonbori or some
Den Town, Osaka.
Town in Osaka, and I got incredible deals. My Orange Spice GameCube, I got it for $3 at a hard off. But then I was not afraid to look at a Super Potato and see something that I wanted for still way cheaper than I could find it online. Notably, I picked up a copy of Panzer Dragoon Mini for the Game Gear.
Which there. I saw that exact same copy and passed on it. That's how uncommon that game is.
So I saw that. I'm like, wow, this is going to be the only one I see. And it was $100. And I'm like, yeah, that's still a really fucking good price. So I'm going to get it. Just because I don't have the time to take the chances and hope that I see it somewhere else for a cheaper price. I'm still going to get that because it's still a way better price. So there's no right or wrong way to go about game hunting in Japan. It's if you have the time and the will to go outside of the bigger urban areas, do it. If you don't, you'll still have a great time at Super Potato or, in Den Town or Akihabara.
Actually, Den Town's legit. There's some actual like legit deals there that are better than anywhere else you'll find in Japan. So I highly recommend Den Town, particularly that Surigaya specialty shop. That place is incredible. Like, I don't know how it stays in business being in that area because its deals are so much better than all the other video game stores around it, and even better than Hard Off in a lot of cases, yet they have amazing inventory. I know it sounds like I'm doing a plug for them, but I've never even spoken to them because I don't speak Japanese. But that place is awesome.
But what's funny, just kind of tying it back into European game hunting and game collecting, is that you're probably a 2-hour flight away from the best place in continental Europe to get games, and that's Republique in Paris.
Yeah, you stole that bit from me.
Oh my god. That place is the land of milk and honey.
It's amazing.
Like, it is amazing.
I remember I was on a trip with Ubisoft back in 2016 in Paris, and they're like, okay, today's yours, do whatever you want. So I was like, all right. So I just wandered around looking for a video game store, and then I found one, and I was like, oh, cool, there's actually a video game store, because I'm sure you've noticed, as someone who actually lives in Europe, actual dedicated video game stores are kind of rare.
We actually have a decent one, and I think you visited
the Rage.
It was the Rage in Dublin.
The Rage.
Pretty good.
It's the only one in Ireland. Like, at least the only one that I found. But that one is good. But even that's just like one. So, and like the UK, I think I found like one or two ever. In most countries, like Germany, I think I found one. Austria, like two. Poland, like half of one. It was like a kiosk that just sold PS2 games. Like, I never see these things, despite how many of these places I go to. But again, back in 2016, wandering around in Paris, and I see this one video game store. I'm like, oh, that's really cool, and they have all this great stuff. And I walk out of it, and then there's another one, and then there's another one, then there's another one. There's an entire street in Paris, in the Republique district. It's like, I call it European Akihabara, because it's just video game stores, and they're all retro. It's insane. Like, if you can hop a flight down to Paris and you want to go video game hunting, it's totally awesome there.
And it's not just European stuff. There's a lot of North American stuff. There's a lot of Japanese stuff. But I mean, I walked out of that city with a suitcase full of Master System games that I paid pennies for. I mean, they were so cheap, and I can't find them anywhere here in the States.
Yeah, same. I picked up a ton of PAL exclusives. It was actually funny. I went into this one store, and I saw, like, they had this knockoff Dreamcast controller, and then they had a bunch of, like, crappy, like, little kids GameCube games that we never got, like Franklin the Turtle and all this stuff. So I was like, okay, I want to get those, but they're all behind glass. And so I go over to get the guy, and I'm just like, excusez-moi, je ne parle pas français, parlez-vous anglais? And he's like, no. And I was like, can I, I basically put in my phone, like, can I get a couple of games? And he was like, okay. And so I pointed the games, and I'm like, frankly, he's like, no, this game for babies. And I was like, no, I don't care who the market is for. I want, and then like the same thing with the controller. I was like, all right, I want that. It was like a third-party European Dreamcast controller. It looked like crap, but I'd never seen it before, and I wanted it for the collection next to a legit one. So I pointed like the crappy one. He's like, no, controller, very bad. And I was like, no, I know that. I don't care. I want that one. He was just like, oh, Americans. Like, we only come there to buy the garbage. That's the thing, though. When I come to Europe for any sort of, like, that's not why I come to Europe, but if I'm in Europe and I'm like, I have the opportunity to buy imports, generally, most of the stuff you guys got was, like, sports titles that were not regionally viable here, or stuff like that. It's not common where you see a Mega Man Wily Wars where it was, like, a legit release that just didn't come out.
I was just thinking when you said this is for babies, I was just thinking about there's a guy on eBay who is selling, I guess what would you call it, like reproductions of like the sticker rolls that they used to have on the Casio Lupis, and I'm just thinking what is that guy's business plan?
I think he's hoping, dude. You'd be surprised how many people have Lupis because of me now. It's like a disease, man. I'm serious. I don't get it either. Like, I have a Loopy. I technically have had 2 in my life, and I would not buy any replacement sticker rolls.
I know, but just like, he told his wife, don't worry, baby, it's gonna take off. Just wait. This is gonna.
Hey, man, Jeff Bezos said the same thing to his parents about Amazon flopping. But hey, how did that work out? So maybe this guy has the future all planned out. That, or he's like Mandela effect. He's like from that other universe that I was talking about where Loopies have taken over and they're like Skynet, and he's just appeasing them with stickers. You never know, dude. You never know.
Just when you were talking about Japanese consoles and imports and all that, are there any kind of, from a technical standpoint, are there any other practical considerations you'd need to think of when adding a bunch of imported consoles to like your mainly PAL setup or your mainly American setup, besides the need to get like a bunch of step-down converters or whatever? Like, does that create its own problems, or?
Right, so from the perspective of Americans, importing stuff from Japan, like I said, not typically that bad. And even in that, it doesn't apply to most of the things, because I think it was around the era of really like the 6th gen where they started getting smarter about this type of thing. Like the GameCube power supply is smart enough to know the difference between which type of voltage it is, so you can use that one on all 3 types, the GameCube for North America, Europe, Japan, etc. Dreamcast, you can swap the power supply out internally if you want to, and replace it with your region and have it still work. Saturn is the same way, actually. But yeah, I haven't really had any major issues with anything like that. But again, I don't keep a single PAL console set up ever. I only ever take them out if I need to use them for testing something, or if it's like something like, say, the Amstrad GX4000, where the only reason I'm firing it up is just to capture footage for a video. Like the Amiga CD32 falls into that same territory of just like, I don't have a reason to keep it connected all the time. Although in that case, I got it RGB modded, so it could fit into the system. But then if you look at the logistics of keeping it powered, it's insane. The brick on that thing is huge, and then it needs its own dedicated step-down converter, which is massive. So it's a lot of work. Whereas the Japanese stuff, really, you don't run into that type of problem. But on the flip side for you, I imagine that would be a lot harder. Unless I'm no electrician, but I'm sure they would tell you that it wouldn't be smart to like have a step down converter at the beginning of your setup and then feed everything to a North American consoles all at once.
Are you familiar with a guy called Kevin? He has a YouTube channel called Gaming the Systems.
No, sorry.
Okay, well he has this insane I shouldn't say insane. It's a really good setup, but he has, 40 or 50 consoles set up, and they're hooked up at all times, ready to go at a moment's notice. And just when you're talking about power, the real bit of genius that he has that I haven't seen anyone else do is that he has all his consoles on this kind of tiered pantry shelving or garage shelving. So it's like 6 tiers of consoles, and then on the top shelf he has I think you call them power strips, we call them extension leads, but they're like these special power distribution units, and the thing that's special about them is that they're individually switched. So he has this power strip facing out, and he would have, he could have 6 consoles plugged into this one power strip, and each outlet has an individual switch beside it. And so when he decides, he wants to play Nintendo 64 or whatever, he can just flip the power on without digging in behind his setup, and then flip the console on. And then even though he's got 40 consoles hooked up, only that specific one that he's using is running a current. And because only that one is running a current, presumably that has other advantages, like, there's no possibility of, interference from another console bleeding into your Switch or whatever, because nothing else is technically powered on. So I was looking to get something like that, but they're very difficult to find. I mean, I think DJs use them for, like, hooking up equipment and stuff like that. But yeah, I was thinking of getting something like that, or combining that with a couple of step-down converters.
I have kind of a mutant version of that, where I basically have some of the consoles on a power strip or extension lead. Where, is it weird hearing that in an American accent?
How exotic!
Yeah. But I have a bunch of them set up on a power strip that has a power button on it, like you've described, and I keep it off all the time unless one of the consoles that's powered by it I feel like using, then I turn it on. But then it provides power to everything. You just have to choose which one you want to activate. And I just kind of prioritized it based on which consoles were more or less likely to get used, and also which kind of consoles share the same cabling. So, for example, the Dreamcast, the PS3, the Sega Saturn, the original Xbox, and even some of these third-party adapters that run the things like the Jaguar and Jaguar CD, the Neo Geo AES, Neo Geo CD, all of those things use the exact same 2-prong power supply. So you can just kind of keep one set up and just kind of hot swap it into whichever one you want to use, so you're not running all these things at the same time. But that requires more hands-on, depending on how you've structured your setup. Now, 40 consoles running at once is a lot more than I have rigged up all at once. I think I'm up to, what did I say, like 18 or something like that. And that's only due to space limitations. But kind of where I'm going with all this is really what you need to understand when you get into this type of thing is you need a knowledge of not just which consoles you want, but a knowledge of networking. And I don't mean networking like, as in, IP addresses, but like networking of like power networking and video networking, because you have to find the common threads and kind of send them all to the right places. So everything that's RGB compliant, you kind of want on one setup, where everything that's kind of caps out with S-Video, you kind of have to go another direction. In your case, you run into the problem of having different power standards if you're running import consoles, so you have to deal with that. Whereas here, that would be on a case-by-case basis only if you imported one of those oddball consoles from Europe that we never got. Again, Amiga CD32. Granted, you could get the Canadian version, I guess, but Amstrad GX 4000, what have you. But for the most part, that's like an extra tier problem that we don't have.
Is there any, when you mentioned the Amstrad, is there any major console that comes to mind, that just put that in my head because the Amstrad was a UK release, I think, but is there any major console that comes to mind where the majority of its game library was programmed in PAL and then converted over to NTSC?
I imagine that would be the Sega Master System.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know if they were programmed in PAL specifically. All I know is that you guys got a vastly superior library for that console than us. Here, the Master System is like, almost no one's ever heard of it. Most people here, I would say that if you asked any even casual gamer, they would tell you that the Genesis was the first console Sega ever had here. Yeah. Which is not true. It's not even close to their first console in general. But the Master System was just so unbelievably demolished by the NES here that it's not even within the lexicon of the American consciousness, like, at all.
Although there is the caveat that most of the games that we look at as European exclusives on the Master System were available in America on the Game Gear, which is basically just a portable Master System. You can get your Sonic Chaos and Master of Darkness, stuff on there, but once again, then you're dealing with aspect ratio problems, the Game Gear being just a battery eater. I'd much rather play them on a TV via a Master System.
And
I agree completely.
And is the area a console was most successful in a good proxy for where most of its games are going to be? So, like, just take the Atari 2600. Atari was an American company. It was released in America first. It had its greatest success in America. Therefore, probably most of its game library is NTSC and then converted to PAL. So by that logic, probably its NTSC would be the version that you'd logically want to get, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean,
I follow that.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, the price and rarity of consoles in regions where they weren't successful is definitely a thing. I remember remarking that when I was game hunting in Japan, I found a lot of the most expensive things that I saw in these stores were like Atari Jaguar games, like systems that.
Oh man, like Super Potato has one like in a glass case, and they're like asking like $1,000 for it. It's
really funny. Yeah,
it's a Jaguar, and I went to another one like a Hard Off, and they had an Atari 2600 in there, and they wanted like $500 for that thing, and I was just like, wow, all right, like so some stuff just doesn't it's a novelty. It's like, ooh, look, an American console. You never see that, particularly from a brand that completely flopped in Japan. Even though they did have one exclusive console, the Atari 2800 only came out in Japan. But even that, not a common thing. So yeah, that's an interesting perspective on all that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth because it's like I obviously don't live in Europe, but the way I've always looked at it is, in America, the NES was a lot more, popular. That was the big third-gen console here. And I always looked at the Master System as that same equivalent in Europe. So, like, how do you, as somebody who's lived in Europe, how do you view the NES as a collector? I mean, do you see it as kind of like the way me and Adam talk about the Master System as this cool thing that we didn't really get here, and we love going to get the European games? Do you see the NES that way?
Well, yeah. I think I happen to have a PAL NES that it's just I think it does run a bit slower than an NTSC version, but it's just the NES that I have. I don't think anybody used it. It's remarkable in how good condition it's in for. I don't know how old it is at this point. What year did that come out? Like 1980.
In Europe, I thought it was 87.
87.
Yeah, in Europe it had a very delayed release.
Yeah, so it's like it looks brand new. So I mean, like it's a real. I got lucky with that one.
It's kind of funny when you think about it. By the time it came out in Europe, it was already like 4-year-old technology, which is like the same lifetime as the Wii U. Imagine if the Wii U came out in 2012 here and then launched in 2016 in Europe. It's almost like that.
I will say one thing about the PAL NES. I do have a single PAL NES game, and it is Stadium Events because
you could.
I want it. Because yeah, exactly. Here it's a $10,000 game, and in Europe it was a $200 game.
I actually have a couple. I've got one. I just have a couple of exclusives. I have, I think, a Smurfs game that only came out there, and I only got it because I saw it and I knew it was on the list, and it was like $1 to €1.
Man, you were really pissing off that French storekeeper.
No, it wasn't that guy. It wasn't that guy. It was
Franklin.
that was That was in Germany, my friend. That was in Germany. I remember why I did it. Give me a second. I'll explain why. But so he also had New Ghostbusters 2, which was the far superior version of Ghostbusters 2 as a video game that North America never got. They got it on the Famicom in Japan, and Europe got an NES release, but for some reason it never came out here. It was developed by HAL Laboratories, like the guys who would go on to make Smash Brothers, made a Ghostbusters game. And he had this complete in box for only a couple of euros, as well as the Smurfs game for, again, a couple of euros. And then the other thing he had was a CD, like an OST of Super Mario 64. And like all of, like, without Smurfs, like the whole thing was like €8. So then I like handed him my credit card, and he's like, you got to spend at least €10 to use a credit card. So I just grabbed Smurfs. That satisfy my reasoning to you, Rob?
Listen, you don't have to justify.
Oh, I had to justify
your fucked up purchases to me, man.
Good. You know, the dumb part is I did have the cash on me, but I wanted to use the credit card anyway. That part I own. That part's my problem. But this kind of actually swings into a different subject almost, because you had one on this list. We just kind of jumped over it, but it was practical imports for a PAL collector. So that's the reverse. For an NTSC collector, we usually go for like regional exclusive stuff that we didn't get that's exciting for one reason or another. Or we go for... Yeah, there's very rarely, like... I don't think anybody imports PAL stuff because it's cheaper. That's not a thing. Like, unless it's like some oddball game that we got, but it was in such limited quantities, like, say, stadium events, where it's just like impossible to find that version. I think that's like the exception to that. But it's not like the Japanese stuff where you just go like, yeah, but I mean, like, we're talking, you know, it's like he was talking about Saturn games. I mean, like, there's a big difference between $200 and like $30,000, like stadium events is, versus like the $200 for, what'd you say, like Panzer Dragons Y versus $30. Like, $200 is expensive, but it's not like break the bank. Whereas $36,000 or whatever is like a car. You know, it's like, you know, you're not going to do that. So the flip side of that is, what are practical imports for a PAL collector? And that, I think, is an interesting perspective, because we don't have that perspective. So I'm curious what you were kind of going for with that. Are you looking for recommendations, or are you trying to tell us something?
I think I was going for more recommendations. Obviously, there are certain systems where it's just where the kind of the choice is taken out of your hands just by virtue of the fact that you're not going to have much of a choice. You know, you're not going to find, you know, maybe you're the one guy in a million that found a PAL Apple Pippin, you know. Or
I have a story about that.
Oh, did you find a PAL Apple Pippin?
Almost. A few years ago, and I still have the email to prove this.
That was like the ridiculous example that I could think of that would never happen.
Yeah, but I got a story. So a couple of years ago, this is before I even owned a Japanese Pippin. I remember talking about the Pippin in some video at some point, and this guy in Germany emailed me, and this was in like 2012 or something like that. And this dude emails me, and he's like, hey man, I saw your video, and you are the first person I've ever seen talk about the Apple Pippin before. Like, ever mention it. And I just wanted you to know, like, I have one. You know, it's this cool thing. I've got like the European release, and I sat there thinking, like, I was pretty sure the European release was like an enigma, it was like a ghost. And I said that to him, and he's like, well, you know, if you want it, I'd be happy to send it to you, because it's just rotting here. The thing's like ridiculously big. I don't want it. I can't find much information about it. And I was like, I don't know, man, that thing's kind of expensive. You should really kind of sit on that one. And then he looked at it. I guess he did some more research and found out the only European units known to exist were the ones that were available on some show floor before they never got retail. Ever.
Wow.
They were never actually put in store shelves. So then he realized this thing could be worth, like, you know, who knows? And he's like, I'm sitting on like the only Apple Pippin in Europe of the actual European version. Then he's like, I'm sorry, I can't send it to you. I'm like, dude, I don't blame you. Hang on to that. Like, but that, yes, I came that close to, he sent me photos. And funny enough, I actually had a reason to go back and check that email like a week ago, but the photo links have long since expired, unfortunately. There's a side story nobody was expecting. Boom.
I was not expecting that.
Yeah, suck it, Rob.
Yeah.
I had a similar thing a few weeks ago. I think you know about this already, but I found I randomly got a Net Yaroze PlayStation development kit when I was about 10. And
wow,
that
was actually another subject on the list, but fine, whatever, we'll jump all around. It's cool.
Nice segue.
So wait, we're just not doing this subject about PAL imports?
Well,
it's up to you. I don't care. It's your call. Well, all right, before we jump into Net Yaroze, let's just give you a couple of random tips, then we'll jump over to it.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, what I was getting at was like obviously most of the consoles, the option is going to be taken out of your hands. If you want to get a Pippin, you're probably going to get a Japanese Pippin. If you want to get Commodore Amiga CD32, you're probably going to get a PAL one. So where there is a choice to be had, I suppose are there any ones that are more friendly to import from a PAL perspective?
Yes, but a lot of people, especially in the current economic situation that we're in, my number one recommendation for a PAL user would be, if you're going for original games, would be the GameCube, just because of the fact that you guys got screwed on the high definition modes where they gave it to us. So if you buy, say, the American version of the Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes, it has the 480p mode built into the disc, whereas the PAL version, they intentionally stripped that out, so it can only run in a lower resolution, or 480i, so it runs interlaced. But things like Swiss, which is like, software you can use with like a hacked console, will allow you to run it correctly on a PAL version. But again, that comes down to collection as opposed to performance. I'm trying to think if there's any other examples where you would really be better off importing an American version. Maybe like an oddball game like South Park Stick of Truth, where the entire game was censored throughout the entire world except for the US and Canada. Is that like the kind of thing you're looking for? Because if you play the European version of that game, you get to a certain point where it's actually, the game stops. And there's this part where one of the characters from South Park is face palming, and there's a big EU flag behind him and says, because of the laws of the European Union, we cannot use this section of the game, so we have to skip over it. Whereas, and they different parts of the world had the same type of warning about how you can't have this part, you can't have that part. But in the US and Canada, it ran totally uncensored. But I mean, the flip side of that is there are the occasional games that you guys get that are uncensored that we don't get. Usually it pertains to if a game has profuse violence, America's totally fine with it. Whereas the European Union is kind of no, you can't do that. But the flip side of that is usually sexual-based content. So something like a Leisure Suit Larry, the one that's on the original Xbox, the European version of that game is uncut from the get-go. The American version of that is censored. You can unlock it, but you have to have beat it at least once, whereas the European one is just from the beginning. So that's usually how it plays out. So I would say if you're going to import stuff from us, don't get any of the sexual based content, because you guys probably have the better version. And then, great tips and tricks right here. The other stuff would just come down to the specifics of games you like, where you would prefer a 60 hertz version, but that starts getting into the older games. And then it goes down to the stuff I usually import on the basis of, which is just exclusives, stuff that didn't come out in my region. But I can't think of any other obvious example. The original Xbox would be good, but if you put if you just hack an original Xbox in Europe, boom, you have a North American Xbox and you unlock the high def modes and it's region free, so there's no real reason to do that.
Yeah, I was thinking I might import a Genesis or a Genesis Model 1 down the line. Stuff like that.
Just to have. Yeah, that's
just to run that.
They're so cheap here too. Yeah. So it's
yeah. Genesis Model 2 here especially is even as recently as last year, I was at Portland Retro Game Expo, which is, by the way, if they ever get to do it again in the post current epidemic or pandemic situation that we're in, I was still seeing boxes of those for $5 each. Those are still pennies. Like they're not hard to get.
You can get a boxed one for like $40. Yeah, they're really cheap.
They're because that was like Sega's only successful hardware here. So that's like the one thing where you can find tons of it. Not so much the games, but the consoles for sure.
And sorry to interrupt you.
No,
Where would you recommend looking? Where would you recommend looking for a PAL user? Like, if you want to try and bypass the eBay scalpers a little bit.
I mean, I'm a member on a lot of different Facebook groups for kind of retro game collectors, and a lot of the interactions that I've had with kind of fellow members on there has been overwhelmingly positive in terms of trades, in terms of sales. They'll definitely throw each other kind of a bone or a good price. Maybe, I'll give it to you for this price, but you got to pay for shipping, or like, something like that. So I would definitely don't sleep on collecting groups, especially if you're in more of a trading mood. Because if you come with, like, let's say, I could maybe get you a European console and we could trade or something like that, they would probably be very inclined to do so.
That's a definite possibility. I would say make sure Americans don't know about one very key thing. So there's something you need to explain to them if you're going to say, hey, we should do a trade, or hey, send this to me. The concept of like import duties is not a thing in the United States. So we don't know about it. So when they ship you something, tell them to mark it as a gift, because if they mark down what it's actually worth, that's when you're paying for it. And I've seen so many stories of Europeans in particular, even Canadians, just getting really pissed off about that. And we're not doing it to be jerks. We don't know. We don't have import tax. It's just not a thing. So we just don't know that other countries do that. So that would be some advice if you are asking Americans to look that up. But the big suggestion I would have for you is if there was like one particular console you're looking for, make friends with locals. And I tell this to everybody: make friends with locals and have them help you out. I mean, the retro gaming community is global. So there's always going to be people that are going to be very likely to be able to find that stuff for you, and then just work out a much better deal. Especially if they're your friends, they might not even charge you other than what they paid to do it. Pay for shipping, pay for the console that, it's no biggie to me, and then I'll just ship it off to you and it's yours. That would be kind of my suggestion. Yeah. I'm trying to think though, because now you got me like rattling around in my brain wondering if there's some version of a console that we got where it's like our version is just so much better than yours that it's like worth importing.
I think it's not. I don't even know if I'm thinking about like the console itself. I guess I'm thinking more in terms of like, I'm trying to think of an example. Like let's say the Atari 20. To go back to the second gen, the Atari 2600, American console, mostly greatest success in America. Therefore, if it had, I'm picking a number out of the sky, but if it had 1,000 games released over its lifetime, and that's probably lowballing it, you could probably bet that like 90% of those were intended to be played in NTSC and then converted over to PAL. And some of those conversions might have been good, and some of them might have been crappy. So, like, the NTSC, you'd probably be, if you were looking to get the last 1% quality out of your gameplay experience, you would probably be better. I don't even know if you can region-free a 2600, but if you could, you would be better region-free modding an NTSC version rather than region-free modding a PAL version, because that will...
I definitely see that, but then you're running into the American RF versus European RF, and
that was just an example that I pulled.
But
like you
I
could
get
pull
what he's
any
saying.
RGB console.
But the problem you're going to run into with most stuff like that is in almost all instances then you would want the American stuff, because American and Japanese stuff, let's keep it real, most consoles ever released were made by one of those two countries, and most of the games developed for them were made by one of those two countries. So the last European made console I think was the Philips CDI. And so, like, it's been a long time. So I'm not sure there has been, with that logic anyway, I'm not sure there's been anything really optimized for PAL. But since then. Now,
That's
to be fair, though...
yeah.
To be fair, though, like, the whole NTSC versus PAL thing is mostly a goner. It's really just, like, a remnant of certain consoles. But I would bet you, even though the Master System was more successful in Europe than it was in either North America or Japan, those games were probably more commonly optimized for 60 hertz than they were for 50 hertz. And they were just kind of converted over. Because I think Japan was still doing the primary programming for that stuff. But... I don't know that to be sure. That might boil down to the specific, games on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was trying to drive at earlier on.
No, that makes perfect sense, and it's actually kind of a head-scratcher, because I'm not sure, with the exception of things that only you guys got, like the Amstrad GX 4000 or whatever, I can't think of anything. You should be. I can't think of anything that would be completely optimized for PAL only. I mean, Rob, can you?
I can't. I mean, like, the only thing I was thinking, maybe some of the computers that were made in the 80s and 90s, like the ZX Spectrum or something like that.
Yeah, that's like
some
a whole different
some of the Commodore stuff, but that's a whole other,
Yeah, we're talking home consoles here, but it's actually kind of an interesting question that I would never have thought about, so I'm glad you're here to talk to us about it. But yeah, aside from just the consoles that were wholly exclusive to Europe, I don't think that there's going to be anything really like that. Because even in the freak case, like we said with the Master System, where it was actually a Japanese console that did better there, I don't think that's optimized there. Hell, I think Brazil, it's still active there, I think they use a form of PAL, and even there, I don't think they're optimized for PAL. They're still running like NTSC conversions. I don't know. That is such an interesting thought. But I think, I don't know. I don't have that perspective, unfortunately.
Okay.
So does that hopefully satisfy you, despite that disappointing? Okay.
Does
that satisfy?
No, it is. I mean, like, it's a difficult question. I mean, like, you can spend a lot of time trying to get the best AV output, but once you've gotten your console RGB modded, that's kind of your job done. Whereas when you're talking about NTSC and PAL, it depends partly on what TV you're using, what console you're using. It differs from game to game. Like, it's potentially an endless kind of maze.
Yeah, it's to be fair for us, it's a lot easier because we had the superior version of that, at least as far as like refresh rate goes, and with the fact that the Japanese used essentially the same thing, so we that kind of was a plus in our favor. The other plus was that, to be frank, most European imports aren't really worth most people's interest over here, because most of the exclusives are just not that exciting. There are definitely some, like we keep talking about with Mega Man Wily Wars and whatever, but those are the exception, not the rule. That's why, again, I almost want to do a video on this. I've been talking about it for a while, just exploring the question of why do people not import PAL stuff more often.
I think that would be interesting.
Yeah, so talking to people like you actually kind of helps explore that for me mentally, because then I can think more about it, because I only have the perspective of the person who is actually doing it. So it's interesting to see like what that's like actually growing up over there with it.
Do upscalers like your FrameMeister or your OSSC, would they do any auto conversion from PAL to NTSC? Probably
yes, they're supposed to convert 576i or 576p over to 1080p or 720p if that's what you configure it for.
Yeah.
It really, again, it depends on how you have it set up, but the short answer to that question is yes.
I got incredibly lucky on that. I actually only got my FrameMeister a couple of weeks ago, and which is kind of crazy. I was actually looking for one on eBay, and I don't know if you've looked them up on eBay lately, but they are going for crazy money.
They the company that made them stopped manufacturing them.
Yeah,
so that's why. And there's no replacement. Like, there's things like the RetroTink, which are good, but the FrameMeister is still the gold standard. And considering how niche of an audience it's really intended for,
Yeah.
it's not that likely you're going to see a superior replacement ever made.
Well, I was looking at them on eBay, and I just happened to stumble across they're called Solaris Japan, and I think they had the last stock of frame. They put out a tweet, I think in 2018 or late 2019, I think, saying, we have our final run of stock of the Framemeisters. It's been discontinued. Once we run out of them, they're gone. And I sent them an email a month or two ago saying, I'm sure they're all gone by now, but do you happen to have any left in stock? And I think they had one or two left, I think, and he just said, Brian was the guy's name, and he just sent it out to me. And it's
Nice.
crazy. I think I got insanely lucky there. I got one of the last Framemeisters, which would be sold at kind of the original retail price. So just
that's pretty good, man. Did they update the firmware to an English BIOS?
No, I did that, but
oh, good.
They would have been completely, it would have been very easy for them to, just set up an eBay profile and sell them for 3 or 4 times the price. But to their great credit, they did not do that. So,
oh, that's good, man. Congratulations. As long as you're using it the right way. Like actually, my buddy Chip, who used to be on this podcast, one thing that always drove me nuts about it, like I would go to his house. He lives in Austin, Texas, and I would be in there and he'd have a Framemeister set up, and I'd be like, "Oh, dude, you're using a Framemeister?" He's like, "Yeah, you recommended it, so I like it." And I was just looking at him like, "You have like your consoles plugged in through composite." He's like, "Yeah, but I don't care. I don't care that much." Like I was like, "What's the point? Like, what are you doing?"
You spent all that money and you're just running a composite.
Yeah, so I think he was running like the Turbo Duo through composite on it or something. Well, not the Turbo Duo, because that one you have to RGB mod, but he was running, I don't remember what it was. It was something like the PlayStation 2 through composite into a Framemeister. I was like, you don't need to do that, like. So that's the thing that always bugs me when people like go out to spend the effort on a Framemeister, but then they don't get the right cables to go with it, and it's just like you just, there's no point. You've just defeated the reason you even did that. But yeah, let's move on to the next subject, which you kind of alluded to there a bit, which is the Net Yozori. You messaged me about this, so I know you took great pride in it. So I want you to kick this one off.
Well, yeah, no, I'm just I'm trying to sell it, which is
well,
this ain't
sell
Craigslist, buddy.
I'm trying to
I'm trying to hawk it. That's why I'm here. Everybody, there's one for sale.
This is the entire reason why I came on. No, but no, it's like
first tell everybody what it is.
Sure, it's a special version of the PlayStation, and I got it when I was 10, and I don't know how I persuaded my parents to let me get it, and I don't know why. But basically, it is a PlayStation development kit that looks like a regular original model PS1, except it has this unique black matte finish to it. It's not like the black plastic that you'd see on a PlayStation 2 or a PlayStation 3. It's kind of like it's almost fuzzy. Like it's a real dust magnet, but like it's a very unique finish, and basically the idea is you would connect it to your computer via VGA, and you would connect it to your TV, and you would essentially code your own basic games on the console. And they used to include the best Net Yozori games of the month on the demo discs that would come with the official PlayStation magazine every month, and yeah, it's a really neat piece of hardware. I have you couldn't buy it in shops. You used to have to. I think I saw an advertisement in the official PlayStation magazine, and you had to send away for it. You'd send away a check and fill in some paperwork, and then they would post you back the unit and give you access to a website and like a community kind of chat room where you could like download dev tools and stuff. And I think a lot of people who later became programmers for Sony, I think, got their start in that community. but that was it was wasted on me. It's actually in almost perfect condition, because I think like the 10-year-old me just got it and tried to use it twice and was like, ugh, can't play games on it, and then just put it back in the box. Like, I'm disgusted with myself. But
at least you didn't be like, all right, I'll take it to GameStop and get $6. So good on you.
Yeah, but
and I'm not wrong. They do have GameStops in Ireland.
They do have GameStops in Ireland.
Yeah. So I wasn't culturally inaccurate there.
No.
Boom.
Development consoles are kind of a really interesting rabbit hole of collecting to kind of get in. Adam, you have a Dreamcast development kit, right?
I have a couple of them, yes.
And you've got that PlayStation 2 one that you've been kind of hyping up for a little bit. Yeah.
I don't have a PlayStation 2 development kit. I have an original Xbox debug kit, and I have a PlayStation 3 test kit. I don't have any PlayStation 2
Oh, it's the PS3. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, and I actually just came across, by me, there is a GameCube NR Reader development kit, which was really cool, that I just kind of stumbled across. And those things are, incredibly expensive, although it would be cool to have one. I could see you running into the same problem that Oliver has of just like, yeah, it's cool, but it's so over my head, and I don't necessarily make the best use out of it, and I could see it going to somebody else a lot better.
I think you still can technically use it. The thing that I'm missing is that you actually needed the memory card for it to boot up. So they called, on the NetEase model, they called them access cards, but it was basically a black PS1 memory card with a little sticker on it. And the idea was you would code the games on your PC, and I think you would, someone will correct me on this that knows better, but I think you booted the codes then up onto the memory card, and then you would pop that into the PlayStation, and then if you try to boot up the PlayStation without that card in it, it'll just go to a screen saying, you need to insert the card. But right now I'm looking to get a PS1 Game Shark, because apparently you can modify a Game Shark so that it can fill that function. So if somebody got it and did actually want to use it, as opposed to just keeping it as a collectible, they could do it that way. But the actual websites have obviously been the servers have been down for years. I think since 2009 or 2010, something like that. Which is actually impressive. They were online as long as they were. Yeah.
Because I think the last PS1 game was like 2005. So to have kept that service that running even 5 years beyond that is impressive. That's one thing I'll give Sony, man. They're very good with console longevity.
Yeah, I think it was launched in I'm just looking at it now. It was launched in 1997, and I think the server came
PS1?
down in 2011. The NetEase was.
Because PS1 was like that came out in '94.
Yeah,
in Japan.
Yeah, this came out in 97, and I think the server came offline in 2009, 2010, something like that. But yeah, it's an interesting little piece of hardware for sure.
Cool. So are you actually trying to sell it, or was that a joke?
No,
are you trying to sell it figuratively?
I am trying to sell it, but at the moment I'm just trying to get the Game Shark to do that modification. I don't want to sell it to somebody and for them not to be able to use it if they want to. So I'm just putting it.
What a good guy! He doesn't want to make it your problem. Everybody.
Exactly.
But if you are interested in picking it up, write a comment that says "Make it my problem."
Please.
Any other thoughts on this? Okay, then I guess we'll move on to our last subject here, which was Rob's only contribution to this entire podcast. Go ahead, Rob. I'm just kidding. Rob's good. He's not that bad.
No, I mean, I like, we try and do a little bit of current events on this subject on this podcast regarding video games and movies and stuff. And the day before we recorded this, we got a Nintendo Direct for Super Mario Brothers 35 35th anniversary, and they announced something that, Adam, a couple months ago, you and I discussed at length, kind of wondering what Nintendo was going to be releasing this fall, and they announced Super Mario 3D All-Stars, which has been at the very top of my video game wish list for many, many years now, and it's coming out like next week or the week after too. So
yeah, it's just kind of out of nowhere. There's not much of a wait to it. Did you manage to put in a pre-order?
Yeah, I got 2 of them. Yeah.
Why 2?
Well, you see, the asshole in me heard that it was only going to be in print until March. So I'm like, oh, maybe I should get a sealed one. Just kind of keep it sealed. So.
Okay. Well, you do you.
So I could scalp it on eBay.
Yeah, I was just we were just skirting around it, but yeah, okay, I get it.
You're
that
guy.
All
of the internet money, man.
Rob's gonna, eventually, hashtag got robbed. Yeah, there you go. Get it?
But also, interesting. We got a new Game Shark, not just a Game Shark, Game & Watch coming out, which is really cool. It's a Game & Watch that plays Super Mario Brothers, which I think it's really cool. I'm just saying, like, Nintendo announced a lot of cool things, so I was just kind of curious what you guys were thinking about that Direct, if you had seen it or...
I didn't watch it live, but I kind of, I followed the news bits afterwards. With that collection, I went ahead and I pre-ordered that on Best Buy with a buddy of mine still has Gamers Club unlocked, so I was able to get that 20% off, yo. So I only paid $50 for that with tax. So that's good, but I didn't realize it was going to be that quick. So that's pretty awesome. I was kind of surprised when I saw that as the release date. I was like, is that like tentative? Because like even Best Buy doesn't have cover art, much less like confidence that they're going to be shipping it that quickly. It's one of those things where I just wonder if they even told retailers they were doing that. You know what I mean? Like they're just like, oh, by the way, you're going to have this big, massive demand game in like, 2 weeks. What? Okay. That wouldn't surprise me. It seems very Nintendo. A lot of people are talking about the fact that Super Mario Galaxy 2 was like omitted from like their history of Mario there, because they showed like a whole bunch of different main series Mario games, and they just kind of jumped over that one, which I think people found kind of odd. I found it more odd that Hotel Mario wasn't listed. I mean, I found that offensive actually, but
that's not 3D, bro.
No, they included like the NES games and the Super Nintendo games. They were talking about the history of Mario.
Oh,
in the main series
okay,
games.
yeah.
But they didn't acknowledge Hotel Mario, so I'm very upset about that. No, kidding. But
it didn't mention Mario teaches typing either. But
well, that's not main series. Come on, man. I don't remember the time Mario was teaching me how to type, but I do remember the time he ran a hotel and things went cray cray. But no, all right. So that 3 collection though, like I was more excited about Super Mario 64 and to a lesser extent Super Mario Sunshine. Mario 64 only because the N64 in of itself it's hard to make it look pretty, and I'm sure the Switch version will be a far superior experience. It's also based on the second iteration of that game, the Japanese only version that had a bug patch in it that fixed a couple issues and then had Rumble support. It's based on that version, which is nice. The GameCube game, Sunshine, like always looked solid to me. I'm sure they'll make it look better. I don't doubt that. But like that one I wasn't as excited about, only for that reason. I was like, it doesn't need it, but I welcome it. Galaxy at first I didn't care, only because it's the Wii era stuff. So I'm like, I didn't care about the motion controls then. I don't care about them now. I'm not done. I'm not done.
You should care.
I'm not done talking, which is normal for me because I'm talking forever. But in that case, I actually read today that they made the motion controls optional. Did you see that?
You get to finally play.
I get to finally not suffer while I'm playing a Wii game or a Wii era game, except for Mario Kart Wii. That game was fine. But I'm excited about actually finally playing it in a manner that will be not requiring me to wave a stick around like an idiot. That's not knocking anybody who likes it. It's just how I feel about any time I play the Wii. I'm just like, am I on candid camera right now? Like, somebody's watching me. This is a joke. This is not a real thing. This didn't really happen. It's like Shazam with Sinbad. It's not real. No, it is?
I'm afraid to talk about how much I like the Wii in front of Adam. I'm just going to...
Nah, it's fine. You go for it.
Quietly exit the chat.
This will be your last podcast appearance. Just like
no. Here's the thing. I am
into
very...
a black hole.
you're all right. The thing is, man, they're video games. Anybody who wants to enjoy them, that's cool. Like, I made a positive reference, not once, but twice, to the Philips CDI in this conversation alone. I did the same thing with the Apple Pippin. Like, Eddie, if you like something bizarre, that's cool. It's just the Wii, man, I never understood why anybody enjoyed it. But if you're on board with that, hey, more power to you. You're getting enjoyment out of it that I just can't find.
I think it's actually hooked up by Composite as well. That's kind of weird.
Oh,
good, I'm glad. Well, that actually represents how shitty it is.
You're giving Adam an aneurysm right now, man.
Actually, I'm pretty happy about that. It was very symbolically accurate. But all right. Anyway, back on point with the games, though. So there was that collection. Then they did the New Super Mario 3D World for the Wii U's like last major,
the last one, yeah.
But like the last major
3
exclusive
too,
title it had. And not only is the Switch getting it, it's coming with like bonus content, like that Bowser's thing or whatever it is.
Yeah, Bowser's Fury.
Yeah, is Bowser's Fury? It is brand new content. That wasn't DLC on the Wii U, was it?
No, that game had no DLC. So
there you go. So it's completely brand new content. It's like they're doing everything they can to just be like, you don't remember the Wii U? We had the Wii, and now we've got Switch. I don't know what happened in between. It's something weird. I don't know.
You know what? And I think the trailer did show that they're adding a few different things. It looks to be running a little bit faster, I've heard, and it's also displayed some new camera angles. So I'm wondering if they might take a route similar to Super Lucky's Tale on the Switch, because when they ported that from the Xbox One to the Switch, they added a 360-degree camera and a few extra things to it. So I'm wondering if we are going to get a bit more of a adaptable camera to that, because that game was a pretty fixed sight line. It's not like a 360 camera like Super Mario Sunshine or Odyssey. So who knows? They might be adding a little bit more than they're letting on.
Word. I'm trying to think. Was there anything else to that conference?
Just some digital games. Like they announced the original All Stars is coming to Switch Online, the NES, Super Nintendo app rather.
That's actually another symbolic reason I hate the Wii. By the way, the All Stars collection for the Wii consisted of Super Mario Brothers 1, 2, 3, and Lost Levels. And I'm sitting there thinking, even when that came out, I was like, why are you excited about this? The Super Nintendo version had all this plus Super Mario World. This is actually worse than the Super Nintendo version. Why are you excited? And I still don't get it. I just don't get it.
Well, at least on the Switch, the app that it's coming out on already has Super Mario World in it to play. So
no, we're arguing about the Wii right now.
Redundant. What?
Yeah, we're arguing about the Wii right now.
Yeah, but you don't want to talk about the Wii. Let's talk about the now.
No, I don't. You're right. Let's talk about the now. By talking about nostalgic crap from the past. All right. Yeah. But that said, kind of hitting back on the thing with Mario Galaxy 2, like it was omitted from like their timeline, which, it's like some people are speculating, did they just forget? Or is it like a motion control issue? Is that why they didn't include it? Or are they saving it for something? And I sit there and I think, like, what other kind of Mario collection could you do that's like a main series thing that would include that? And I can't really think of anything else, because if they already separately re-released Mario U. They're now separately re-releasing Super Mario 3D World, and obviously Odyssey doesn't need it.
Adam, you're glossing over the point that there's obviously going to be a DLC pack that's going to be Hotel Mario, Mario's Missing, Mario Teaches Typing, and Super Mario Galaxy 2. It's going to be an additional $40 that you could download.
The thing is, people would definitely pay $40 for that. Like, that's not even funny.
For Hotel Mario? Totally.
Oh, for that whole collection. I mean, Mario, Hotel Mario alone, they would do it, because everybody's like, that's the one I've never been able to try. But it's like, you'd have to include Mario's Wacky Worlds that was unreleased. Like, you'd have to go crazy. Yeah. I am being serious, though. Like, if you wanted to include that in some sort of compilation, I don't even know if you have that option. It is kind of funny thinking about it, that the N64 really just had that one, and then the GameCube just had that one. And then the Wii just had those two. You know, and it's funny, like, the Wii U was considered a flop, and it had 2 on it.
If I'm thinking about a logical reason that it's not on there, I honestly think a DLC for it is... If it is going to get released, it's probably going to be through that, and let me tell you why, because a lot of the third-party developers on the Switch have been kind of doing this not-so-popular thing of, with multiple games on a disc, like the Resident Evil games, or something like that, they'll have one of the games on there, but you have to download the other one.
Oh, you mean on the carts? Yeah.
On the carts, yeah. So I know Nintendo historically hasn't done that. They like their games to kind of fit all-inclusively on the cart. I wouldn't be surprised that they didn't add Galaxy 2, and they aren't going to launch with it because it couldn't fit on the cart for all 4 of those games.
I think that's a logical theory, as well as the motion controls might have an effect on it. I don't know the games well enough to be able to say that with any sort of knowledge.
I mean,
I'm just speculating.
I don't remember Galaxy 2 having any more extensive motion controls than the first one. But that being said, I would not be surprised if that was a reason that they couldn't get it optimized right, or that they couldn't fit it on the cart and they're just going to release it as free DLC, or like pay an extra $10 or something like that and you get Galaxy 2 in 6 months.
So I'm sitting here thinking about it, and obviously the original file size is not the best representation because it doesn't account for all sorts of upgrades they would have to make to get it running, especially when you're not emulating it. But if you do calculate the original file size, Super Mario Galaxy 1, without removing any sort of dummy files, would have been around 4.4 gigabytes. And Mario Sunshine, without removing dummy files, would again have been about 1.35 gigabytes. And then Mario 64 is a whopping 8 megabytes. So all of that combined, I mean, a Switch cartridge, can host 32 gigabytes. Now, that's not all practical. You end up with maybe probably like 29 usable or whatever. Or maybe more than that, probably more like 30 usable. But you do have to wonder, like, once you optimize it and once they kind of re-encode it, because I'm guessing they're not doing N64 and GameCube emulation.
No.
So I don't know that, but I'm guessing they're not. So,
but they're also adding higher resolutions of the games, 1080p support, 16:9 widescreen.
I know. I'm just speculating at how big it might actually be, though I kind of have this vague memory that Mario Galaxy 2 is one of the handful of dual layer original Wii games where it's like actually like an 8.5 gig game. Does that ring a bell to you?
I believe so. It was a very late release in the system.
Size is a very logical reason why it may not have functioned on its own. So, in a serious question, and since Oliver, you've been so quiet here, man, you can interrupt us. We don't know what we're talking about, man. We just go.
I really don't know what I'm talking about, but
that's fine. You fit in perfectly then. But here's the thing. So, like, all right, Oliver, you suddenly Jeff Bezos just bought you all of Nintendo. It's yours. You can do whatever you want. But he's just insistent that you make a Mario 3D collection Part 2. Well, I guess Part 3, whatever. All-Stars Collection Part 3. And you have to include Super Mario Galaxy 2. What are the other games that you pair with it?
Oh, God, I'm the worst person to ask this question.
Well, you think about it while Rob gets it wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, it's a head scratcher, isn't it? I think that's kind of the problem they ran into. Like, there's no other obvious ones unless you want to start going down that. We should call this episode Rabbit Hole. But if we're going to go down that rabbit hole, I think we're looking at some of those. Yeah, I think you'd have to get some of those, like, 3DS games they put out and, like, the DS games they put out. Because that's, like, the only other stuff that isn't regularly revisited in these types of things. Only because it was all the handheld stuff.
There is one game that's Yoshi's Island, the Super Mario World 2. Was not on the original All-Stars cart. It's not on this. I don't even know if it's on the Switch Online Super Nintendo app yet.
There are a ton of Mario side games. That's kind of the problem, though, is like Nintendo apparently considers like 8 of them to be canon, and they apparently removed Super Mario Galaxy 2 from that list. They showed it. I mean, I guess that's what they consider the main series to be, for whatever reason. I don't know. But if you were to say, okay, I'm just going to choose the next set, and, you know, I think that Galaxy 2 is the obvious one. After that, I think Mario or Yoshi's Island 2 is a great choice.
Oh,
go ahead.
Wario World
For GameCube? Okay.
3D.
Yeah.
It's a 3D, technically Mario Universe spinoff.
I would actually throw in some other ones. I don't think you'd get them, but like those Super Mario Land games for the Game Boy, like 1 and 2.
That 6 golden coins, the second one, was
that is
not
one of the best Mario games ever.
And it was not in that video reel at the end.
Oh, that's you know why? That series was not made by Shigeru Miyamoto. He actually thought it was terrible at first.
No, but Mario Land 1 was in there.
Oh, it was? Okay, then I don't know. I don't know. But those would be good to include in stuff like that. I mean, they kind of have to do... Basically, the problem they're running into is what Sega ran into when they did... like, on the GameCube, if you remember, they did a collection of Sonic's... Like, Sonic's Mega Collection or whatever. And it had all the obvious Genesis ones. But then they wanted to do a second version of that called Sonic Gems, and the only thing they went into it knowing they wanted to do was Sonic CD, because that was like the big one that was missing. And after that, they had to throw in some random stuff. So they're like, Sonic R and Sonic the Fighters. It's an unreleased arcade game.
The Game Gear game.
And they just threw all the Game Gear games on there.
But ironically, you know what was missing from there? Knuckles Chaotix. There's always these weird black sheeps in franchise history that just like don't get re-released, you know?
Yeah, I'd say Sega's a little better about releasing stuff like that, because like they literally just said, okay, and here's all the Game Gear games ever made. But with although I don't know if they included Tails Adventure, maybe they did. I don't remember.
They did Adventure or Sky Patrol, but not both of them. They did one of those.
Okay, I don't remember, but yeah, there are vastly more Mario games, and Nintendo is oddly selective about which ones they allow to return. So I think that collection would be very difficult, and I think you would have no choice but to start mining all the handheld stuff, unless you were just going to start going insane with it. Like, but then you could do a different thing. Like, you could do an entire Mario Party collection. You don't have to include that in that set. You can do an entire Mario Kart collection.
Dude, throw the Mario Clash and Mario Tennis from the Virtual Boy on there. Like, shit, you know, there is like some weird stuff that's Mario related that has never been re-released. You know what? You just made me think of. There is still a Mario game, as far as I know, on the Wii U that is not on the Switch. And that is the Mario Tipping Stars. It got a physical release in Japan, and it got a digital release in North America and Europe. So it was originally like a DS or 3DS game, but I'm wondering if that would be viable, unless it's already on the Switch, and I don't know. Because the problem with the Switch is it has like every game ever made on it, so it gets kind of complicated quickly. Maybe that's the other problem they ran into. It's like, how many of these games, these Mario games, already had some sort of digital release over there anyway? Yep. So there you go, guys. Look, keep an eye out for Mario Gems Collection coming in 2021. Gems. With Mario Galaxy 2, Hotel Mario, and Wario World. Amongst all of the other ones. Also going to have the Virtual Boy Wario game. Why not? It's going to have that. Yep. Throw it in there. And we'll actually get the Mario Bros. Games, specifically the 5200 version. Not 2600, not 7800. The 5200 version of that will be on that collection. Yep. Look out for it. Introduction to the game is Rob just yelling at you for a minute until you can play. Buy this! This screams. Is awesome! Have you ever seen those videos of like jackrabbits just screaming for no reason? You ever seen those before? Yeah. It's just Rob doing that for like 5 minutes. And you have no... It's like, remember when you ever turn on a DS or the Wii and it just had that like health and safety warning that you couldn't skip over until enough time had passed? It's got that, but Rob screaming for 5 minutes like one of those jackrabbits, and then you can get access to Hotel Mario. It's totally worth it. So I think that'll about do it for our Nintendo Direct discussion. 1080p 16:9 Hotel Mario. Mm-hmm. It's going to be super high def. It's going to be the best. Okay, well, that acid trip is about over. Yeah, let me do a quick round of shout-outs here, because we're at that point.
in the podcast here. So everyone at the everyone who pledged here is at the following level in which they get a shout out. Once again, that's a reminder. If you want to join the Patreon, much like Oliver has done here, you can be on the podcast. You can get shout outs. You can choose subjects. You can just get early access to videos, including the podcast. So thank you very much to the following people: Caleb Bravo, Joseph Tamburino, Luis Bonilla, Michael Kelly, Trey Wagner. Once again, that's Caleb Bravo, Joseph Tamburino, Luis Bonilla, Michael Kelly, and Trey Wagner. Thank you to all of them. And also thank you to Oliver for being here and joining us on this whole crazy adventure.
Yeah, thank you.
So anything else you want to say to everybody before you head out?
Yeah, no thanks. I'm just trying to think.
No thanks.
Thanks for having me again, guys. I'm just trying to think, is there anything else that we... there's nothing. The only other thing that's kind of on my radar right now is I'm... you know Jan that does the CF card mod for the Dreamcast?
Yeah.
He's actually... I actually got in touch with him after I saw your video, and he's actually fixing my CF card Dreamcast right now, so I guess just to give a quick shout out to Jan and just say that he's absolutely great.
Jan's a good dude. He's actually also one of the guys that got... he helped get Heroes of Might and Magic 3 for the Dreamcast dumped. And he also helped to get that that demo or playable beta of TD Cycles dumped. He's
fixing mine right now, and he's also modifying my broadband adapter so that it fits, so that it matches the mod that he did to the actual console, so that you'll be able to slot out the regular modem.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And slot out the broadband adapter as you need. So
nice.
Jan's great. So just wanted to say that.
Shout out to Jan, and don't forget to write the comment about bother me about the net Eurosi if you're interested in getting it from him.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Oliver.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to part 2 of the September 2020 Figure It Out cast. We're here with our second guest of the evening. Joining us from Georgia, I believe, is Leaf. How you doing, man?
Yep. Hey, what's going on? What's going on, party people? Hey,
dude.
Name's
welcome.
Name's Leaf.
Welcome to the show.
Don't wear it out. Everybody, feel free to talk. I'm basically here as a kind of a passenger. I'm more of a layman's technician. You know, I appeal to the population, I suppose. You know, I know a thing or two, but I'm not like super into. You know, like I'm not like a PC elite gamer. You know, I don't believe in the whole PC master race stuff. I'm going to keep it as PC as I can. I got the mouth of a sailor, so
fuck that,
try
man.
to be
Don't worry
as cool. Okay.
Yeah, we don't give a shit.
Oh, thank God. Oh my fucking God, thank God. Oh,
yeah, you're the John Everyman gamer.
Joe,
is that an accurate?
Joe
exactly.
Q.
Joe
gamer.
Everyman. Joe Q gamer.
Yeah, I still got a PS2. You know, I don't know everything about enhancing the resolution. I'm one of those guys who sees a $10 thing on Amazon and it says HDMI PS2, and I'm just kind of like, yeah, I want that. Okay.
Oh, don't say that. You're going to get
You're
on
breaking my heart. You are tearing me apart, Leafy Poo.
So, you know, I just again, I'm the layman, so like sometimes you just gotta break shit down to me, and then I'll be like, oh fuck, okay, you know, because I don't have all this time, you know, to diddle around. However, you know, if there is a boomer who needs help, you know, with internet stuff, yeah, I'm tech savvy enough to
So
help out.
you help them out with getting logged on to AOL and make sure everything's copacetic.
Yeah, like have you turned it on and off?
Yeah.
Have you turned it on and off again?
Is your mouse
Like,
upside down? Turn it the other way.
Yeah, basically, or like, you know that little wireless USB thing? Huh? No, it comes in the package, Mom. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
So,
yeah, they love to do that, don't they?
So Leaf is a Patreon backer of the channel, and he is at the tier this month where he pledged enough money to be able to join Adam and myself, and he picked a number of topics for us to discuss for your listening pleasure tonight.
Which we really appreciate. Thank you.
Yes, it's less work for us, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually
like,
the...
yeah.
That's like the whole scam behind this whole thing is just, I want you to be on here so you can do the work of picking the subjects. It's just, it makes it so much easier. That's what's really behind all this.
I bet.
Yeah. Although, in my defense on that one, we actually did add one subject that had nothing to do with you, only because it broke within the last day, like between the 2 recording sessions. And if we don't talk about it, I know I'll get endless amounts of crap in the comments. So we're going to go over this one real quick because of people who watch.
I feel special.
Yeah. So like the other day, a Shenmue anime was announced. Now Rob kind of broke my heart a little bit, telling me just before this that he's really like not into Shenmue at all, and it devastated me. Now, Leafy, are you on that? Have you played it at all? Do you know anything about it?
That's a no. That's a no.
Yeah, that's what that is.
No,
so that's...
I like hearing you talk about it. Like it's really interesting whenever you make a video about it. Like it makes me almost want to get it. However, it's just hard to get right now. I feel like I should get the Dreamcast version because it's the original version, but and then I want the proper HDMI sort of hard modded modified Dreamcast. That way I can play it in the right resolution. Because I feel like maybe some stuff is missing from the Xbox original version, even though the Xbox original version probably looks better. Am I right? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, what platforms do you have?
Re-release it. I have
like modern
One
stuff.
X.
Yeah, just get the Xbox. Just get the Xbox One version of 1 and 2. It's fine. Just do it. It's fine.
All right.
Problem solved.
Fine. I'll do that. Okay.
It's okay.
However, I feel like I'm probably missing out on on some stuff that carried over, or that wasn't carried over from the original Dreamcast one, like the brand association.
Yeah, that's true.
Just, I don't know. Maybe
you lost a bunch of sponsors. That's about it.
Yeah. For someone who's not into the game, you seem to know more about it than Rob. I'll give you a lot of credit there.
I know about it.
Talk about it,
Thank you. Yeah. But all right, but to circle back around to the point of this discussion.
By the way, you saved Sean Moo. You were the original person that was talking about it.
I saved Sean Moo. Who's Sean Moo?
Sean Moo? That's what it's called. Right?
Sean Moo.
Yeah, I'm like, I thought you were making a joke. No, Shenmue.
Shannon
Moo. Yeah, Sean Moo is some like guy who I don't know who Sean Moo is. Someone out there needs to create the Twitter handle Sean Moo and just become an awesome Shenmue fan. I'm telling you, that needs to be a thing. That's great. I actually thank you, Leafy, for creating that just now. But no, Shenmue, the franchise is getting an anime, so I was privy to this beforehand, and there's a bunch of stuff I don't think I can say, so I'm just going to kind of reiterate what is allowed to be said. It is a show that is being created by the guy who created One Punch Man, which is a big anime show. I admit I'm not super familiar with because anime is not really my thing, but it's being done through Sega of Japan and will be distributed here through Crunchyroll and Adult Swim. And I found out that most people outside of the US and Canada don't seem to know what those are. And for those who don't, I guess Crunchyroll is like, correct me if I'm wrong, is like the premier streaming service for anime, and Adult Swim is like the more mature section of Cartoon Network. So, and then they've been airing anime for years through Toonami. So it's actually been very interesting to see because Shenmue is popping up all over a lot more feeds that are not really usually associated with video games. So it's been kind of strange to see it pop up there so much, but it seems like the goal of this is to attract more fans to the franchise, and hopefully if you kind of lure more in, they'll be like, oh wait, there's a game about this, that's cool, maybe I'll go ahead and get that game, and then perhaps grow the brand somewhat. But to clarify for anybody out there who is worried, this is not intended to replace a possible Shenmue 4. So there, I've said my piece.
Is it, well, I mean, to that point, is it covering the events of the first game first 3 games, or is it like a new story? I mean, I don't know how much you know, obviously, but
it would appear that the first season, which is 13 episodes, is intended to cover primarily the events of the first 2 games, which would make sense because if this is essentially spearheaded by Sega of Japan, they wholly own the first 2 games, and they would have a vested interest in those 2 selling better. Like if someone like Leafy Poo, for example, were to watch the anime and be like, oh, I like this, where can I get it? Oh, I can buy it on Xbox One. Great. Boom. They get a sale out of that. Whereas Shenmue 3, they don't have as much interest in because they owned the IP, but that's essentially all they have for that. So it would make sense that it would kind of end there. If I'm just guessing, but my assumption is if it's successful enough that could drive enough interest to create Shenmue 4 and then perhaps create a second season out of the content of Shenmue 3 and 4.
Okay, that makes sense. So I mean, like,
yep.
I mean, you've got to be excited about it, right? I know you don't watch anime, but granted, I don't either. But like, I'm sure you're interested in this.
It's funny. My interest doesn't come from the product itself so much as it comes from what else can come of it. Namely, the idea that more brand interest means there's a greater probability of Shenmue 4 happening. It means possibly more merch or whatever being associated with it. But when you boil it all down to like, how excited are you to watch these 13 episodes? Like, I don't really like anime that much, and I'm obviously very familiar with the story of 1 and 2, so it's not really likely going to offer me much unless they do things like the boat chapter that is infamous for taking place in between 1 and 2 that got cut. It'll be kind of cool to see it, but it's like I said, I'm more interested in the side things that come of it potentially as opposed to the actual final product.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Anyway, that's probably enough on this because, again, if you guys aren't really fans, it's not really much of a discussion we can have. I just wanted to say it for everybody out there. So are you want to move on to the first real subject here, the one that Leafy created?
Yeah, so Leafy wanted to discuss general Konami suckage, I guess. Just Konami sucks.
Konami sucks.
So
that's all he wrote as his first subject. Konami sucks.
I try to like keep up on video game kind of news and everything. It's like my first thought was when you presented this topic list. I'm like, oh shit, what did they do now? Like, have they done something recently to get your goat, or is it more of a cumulative?
They ruined my childhood, and I will always hate them for it. So
fair enough.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Yeah, they ruined Yu-Gi-Oh. They ruined Metal Gear. They ruined everything. They ruined it. They ruined it all. Don't like it. Don't like them. And fuck them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just to recap, it's like, some of the stuff he's probably talking about is like their toxic kind of employee relationship, especially with like noted game developer Hideo Kojima of Metal Gear fame. Just the disservice they do to a lot of properties. I know a lot of people, and myself included, were very fond of Hudson Soft, the developer behind games like Bonk and Bomberman, and they basically bought them out and gutted them. So they are not a beloved video game developer.
Which is ironic because there was a time in their history that if it said Konami on it, you knew it was good. It was like Capcom and Konami. If you saw their names on it, oh, this is a good game. Like, it was very rare for them to have a miss. And then they just did like a full 180. I would say probably somewhere in the middle of the 6th generation, and then they hit really hard in the 7th generation where they were starting to just pump out crap associated with their best brands, and then all that really shady stuff happened within like the 8th gen, I would think.
Yeah,
so awful. I hope they bleed money.
They kind of were for a while.
They're not making many games, so it's like I don't see where their money is coming from anyway. It's from
pachinko machines. I mean,
pachinko machines is a big part of it.
Gambling scene.
And it's also funny, they're making weird stuff. Like you just talked about Hudson Soft and all that. People are super excited about the TurboGrafx 16 Mini, the PC Engine Mini. Well, who actually produced that was Konami.
Which, granted, that's probably the best thing they've done in a while, because I love the Turbo 16 Mini.
And it's just piggybacking off the work of other people.
Yeah,
but
basically.
Technically they're the rights holder, so it's theirs. But at least they released it. I'll give them that credit.
Yeah. Well, recently I know there's been some talk, kind of rumor mill, about them possibly kicking the tires again on Silent Hills, the PT project that was originally done by Kojima, and is famously kind of a dystopian, warning about the future of digital gaming, where they published this amazing demo of a game called PT, which ended up being a new Silent Hill game, and they delisted it from the store, and now it is lost media. The only way to get it is if you have it installed on your PS4. So who knows? Maybe they're and I know they released the whatchamacallit, the Castlevania collection digitally recently, which was pretty well received. So maybe they're trying to get back into the good graces of Leaf. Who knows?
All right, that's a good point. Leafy, what would it take? What would Konami have to do? Like, realistically, not, they have to send me like $1 million check. What's a realistic thing that they would have to do where you'd be like, okay, that was good, I'll give you some credit?
They have to come up with new IPs. They can't survive off of nostalgia anymore. They need that same creative energy that they had in the 80s and 90s, and they need to find a way to hire new artists, new creation development teams. They need a show. They need a show that they can compete in today's landscape. And I just think that their actions and what they're doing right now, this whole and again, a lot of it is based off of the whole Hideo Kojima, but and the debacle that was all that all created, but mostly just the total ruining and devastation of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game scene. It is not fun for newcomers. It is not a children's card game anymore. I don't believe that. It's way too expensive. The rules are always changing, and it's crap. I mean, you can't use the same cards that you used when you were a child in today's scene, and they're always reinventing the cards, and they're always changing the rules of the cards and new mechanics and new systems. I hate it. There's just their actions and the things that they've done is they try to reintroduce the characters from the past, and they try to reintroduce IPs from their past, to try to get people hyped up and talking about them. And I just think it's fake. It's like the same. It's like what you're seeing in Hollywood. Like, it's all just part of like this disgusting culture where they're just mimicking things of the past to cover that they have no creative energy anymore. I mean, the artist and the art that's on the cards is great and whatnot, and maybe there's some, I don't know, maybe there's some interesting developments with the anime, even though the anime used to be interesting, at least when we were kids, and now, it's totally uninteresting. Whatever happened to Bakugan? Whatever happened to Duel Masters? Whatever happened to these like new creative projects? They left them to die. I mean, they left Hideo Kojima out and just everything that they've done, and the whole, and also participating in the whole gambling scene with the pachinko machines, it just leaves a dirty taste in my mouth. Where this is a money grubbing company. All they care about is capital gains. All they care about is meeting the bottom line. So I don't know if they can really placate to me anymore because they've already abandoned their legacy of creation. At least that's my perspective. Whatever, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see. No, I definitely see what you're saying. Like, I think though a lot of the problems that you've kind of vocalized regarding Konami are kind of symptomatic of a lot of companies in the video game and card industry, including companies like Nintendo, which generally have a pretty good PR image. I know you mentioned the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game in the way that's like, the old cards aren't used anymore, and they've kind of like shut it off from newcomers. I know Pokemon Company, when they took over from Wizards of the Coast back in the day, did something similar to that. And obviously the reliance on nostalgia and old properties instead of developing new exciting IPs is problematic across the industry. From Konami to Nintendo to to every kind of third party developer. So, I definitely see what you're saying, like about that, but I think Konami might just be the tip of the iceberg in regards to that.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess maybe it's easy to cast all the blame and shame onto Konami because they are culturally relevant. At least their IPs are to a lot of old school gamers or whatever. But I just don't. I guess I'm just so disappointed at the way things are turning out, at least for 2020. 2020 sucks, okay?
Yeah, we all know that.
And Konami is not helping. I just wish we could have a legacy, that there was room enough for legacy sort of tournament styles. I wish that there was room enough to a point where, it wasn't so much for, like, teenagers and grown-ups, and it was more, it went back to kid-centric. It went back to being in the minds of children and being in the minds of everybody, actually, rather than just older teenagers and young adults who are fixated on the nostalgia. I just think, I think that as time progresses, people are going to drop off, and they're always going to make money off of the pachinko and the gambling industry, and I only think that that's indicative of the problematic business practices that they do. Although everybody has a way, and is gambling legal? I mean, yeah, to an extent, but it just shows how degenerative their values really are, I guess. And people might argue with me, and who do you think moral superiority? But that's just my perspective, and I'm just a growing. I'm a young adult who's growing up in today's society, and there are things that I see that are they used to be cultural staples for my adolescent years, and it stinks. It stinks when you see them kind of turning their back on you. It just feels like so disrespectful, shameless, and fuck them. I hope they lose in the grand scheme of things.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I think I've said my bit about it.
Yeah, I don't know how to top that.
burn down the headquarters and salt the earth so they shall never rise again.
No, I disavow that. But at least economically, yeah, I hope they suffer, and hopefully it'll correct them to.
All right, let me ask you a hypothetical. Let's just say, for example, that all of a sudden tomorrow, Konami filed Chapter 11. They have to liquidate assets, and therefore their IPs have to go off elsewhere. Any particular ones you would want to see end up in any particular place?
Who is the development team that created? I know.
Not so much the development team, the IPs. Okay. So like Metal Gear Solid, Silent Hill, I guess Castlevania. Those. What companies do you think would do them justice to inherit them?
Are we talking about justice or things that would shake things up and make things
whatever you want? In this case, for some reason, they gave you, like, Konami put it in their will that you get control of the estate. So where are you sending that stuff?
I would love to see half of their assets in order to keep the gaming industry competitive and interesting. And this is like if I was a bureaucratic government official, I guess. I would like to split 50-50 of the assets to Nintendo and to Microsoft Xbox development team. Okay. That way it could keep both companies relevant. PlayStation has enough IPs. They're the big dog. They're the big game in town. And Xbox is lacking exclusives big time. And Nintendo, they're always going to have their IPs, but I think if Nintendo were able to utilize these more grown up and mature, I guess, IPs, it could bring some more interesting competition, whatever, to get people buying games, and get that money fluctuating in the economy. I think that would be the most interesting and probably beneficial to everybody sort of decision. Because again, I think Sony has enough IPs as it is. I don't believe in timed exclusives. I think if 50% of the assets were exclusive to Nintendo and 50% of the exclusives were exclusive to Xbox development team, I think that would be a fair shakeup of things.
So if you were to cherry pick some of those IPs, again, your Metal Gear Solid, Silent Hill, Castlevania, where are you sending which one to which company?
I would send. I think I would send Silent Hill to Nintendo, Metal Gear to Xbox, Yu-Gi-Oh to Xbox to placate to the Japanese crowd. I know that's a long shot, but maybe it would work. At least timed exclusive. Maybe I don't know because my principles about time exclusivity is kind of shaky. But there are certain things I think should go to Xbox, and then certain things that I think the more mature, I guess, should go to Nintendo. That way, that they could get more grown-up people playing the Bing Bing Woohoo console, and it didn't look like such a toy, you know. And then Microsoft could get, you know, just the thing that sells, just the things that would drive, you know, people to play Microsoft. I think Metal Gear should go to Xbox, definitely.
Okay. All right, fair enough.
Yeah, you know what? Kind of piggyback on that. I would love to see Nintendo really have the rights and ability to use some of the old Hudson Soft IPs like Bonk, like Bomberman. I think they could really do some interesting stuff. I think it'd be interesting to see like a Splatterhouse game from somebody like a third-party studio for Microsoft or Rockstar or something doing like a new Splatterhouse game. I think that'd be really, really kind of cool to see some of these IPs that haven't been used and try and, you know, to drum up support for them by using people's nostalgia for some of these older titles.
All right. Fair enough.
I think CD Projekt Red could also utilize some of the newer intellectual properties too.
Oh yeah, totally.
Oh yeah,
totally.
I trust them with. I would trust them with almost anything. I mean,
I think they would do a great job with a Silent Hill.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I do have to break the fantasy a little bit. I think a Japanese company dissolving would be very hard to get bought out by anything that isn't Japanese. So I think your heavy hitters for acquiring those assets would be Nintendo, Sega, Capcom maybe if they can afford it. Sony, I'm just gonna keep it real with you, would probably be a big buyer. I think they would gun hard for Metal Gear Solid and Silent Hill.
Castlevania.
I could see Sega going after all the Hudson stuff because then they could just keep re-releasing that. Nintendo, I think, would try hard for a bunch of stuff and probably walk away. I don't know enough about Yu-Gi-Oh, so forgive my ignorance. But when you said it made more sense with Microsoft, I was like, it's more of a child-friendly thing that includes a lot of cards and toys. Does that not fit perfectly with Nintendo?
You know, and it does fit perfectly with Nintendo. But I feel like Nintendo has enough as it is that I think if Microsoft were able to get a chunk of that, it could bring new international attention to the potentiality of such a super duper mega high tech powered console. I mean, I think we all know that. I mean, I don't want to. I guess we're approaching it differently. Xbox is going to be the best one. I mean, right?
We're approaching it differently. You're approaching it from like, and this is fine. You're approaching it from the perspective of what you want to have happen. I'm approaching it from the perspective of like what I think would happen. But yeah, I hear you on that. It would be nice to have more diversity from some of these brands.
Yeah, can we agree though that Nintendo is just, you know, they need more adult-centric games.
Yeah, I mean, they tried that a few times, and it's never really panned out for them. It's one of those things where there's like this minority of people that are very loud that say, I want my Nintendo stuff to be like super, you know, mature. And every handful of time they throw some raw meat at that base, they don't really show up to actually buy it.
Yeah.
So they don't really do it very often.
Metroid is like a classic example of that. Everybody kind of says, oh, we want Metroid Prime. We want like that, you know, that T for T Nintendo, you know, and then it's like nobody bought those games. It's a shame. They're great, but they're not financially successful, yeah.
That's kind of my point. Or your occasional, like, Eternal Darkness, even that's going back to GameCube. There are occasionally these games that Nintendo puts out there where they're like, hey, we did it, and just nobody really buys it. Even though they end up being, like, great games. It's Nintendo knows where their money is made. It's like on this child-friendly stuff that ironically is bought by all the men who claim they wanted the adult game. It's.
Yeah,
I mean, I know I'm guilty of it too.
I'm reminded of the dark history of Zombie U.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although to be fair, that was Ubisoft.
But it was a Wii U exclusive.
It was a Wii U
for
exclusive.
years,
Yeah. Anyway, I think that we're kind of getting too far out of Konami Sucks, so we'll wrap it up there and move on to the next subject. The next thing you wanted to talk about was very specific about Halo Infinite being delayed.
Yeah. Well, I think they've been investing and they've been creating this Xbox original game for over 20 years. Brute Force for Xbox Original, and I gotta say it's pretty lackluster. Halo Brute Force Edition.
Boo. Boo.
This is where I just let you guys debate because I don't know enough about this.
You don't know about Halo, and I don't know about Shenmue, so kind of like balance.
That's fine. I'll just kick back and just get entertained.
Yeah.
I'm with the rest of the audience. I'm with you on this one. Let's just sit back and enjoy.
The rest.
It looks like shit. It looks so awful. I'm so glad that they delayed it. I'm happy. As a Halo fan, I'm happy. I think the thing that's always made Halo kind of great, but also problematic in some ways, is that crunch culture that Xbox Game Studios has always kind of pressed onto them. I'm glad that they have more time because, that game looks awful. It does not look like a next-gen game. It looks like a current-gen game. In fact, Halo 5 looks better than what we saw, at least. I know that maybe that they were running it on, some dated, I guess, hardware or whatever. But you were supposed to show it off. This was supposed to be a show off. And I like the game mechanics. Don't get me wrong. Like, the grappler hook was awesome. I think Chris Ray got successfully predicted that. Wow. But again, I just think. Come on, man. I mean, those graphics were really underwhelming. And that Brute is just so ugly.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm gonna straight out say it's like Halo Infinite really broke my heart because before it got delayed and kind of everything, I was a day one buyer for the Series X. Now I don't see a reason to buy Series X day one, just because the launch lineup, even the launch window of games is anemic, and all the main ones are available on the Xbox Series X, which is where I think a lot of the problems with the Halo Infinite demo stem from. Now, I love the art style. I love that they're trying to recapture some of the magic and some of the visual cues of games like Halo, the original Halo Combat Evolved. But I think they're sticking to it to a fault a little bit. And I also think that Microsoft forcing this game to run on both the Series X, which is going to be the most powerful video game home console, in history when it comes out, as well as the Xbox One, is hampering the fact that it's like, okay, it might just be chalked up to like, okay, the only difference between these games is going to be maybe frame rate or some textures, as opposed to an entirely different build of the game. And I think that is a problem, that even though the Xbox Series X is, I think, markedly more powerful on paper than the PS4, developers...
I think you mean Xbox One X.
Xbox One X and a PS5. I think that developers are going to be kind of hampered by having to effectively develop two builds of a game, as opposed to PlayStation 5 exclusives, which will be able to take advantage of the hardware to its ultimate limit. So,
to be fair, it's not just the... Sorry, I just want to add this because I'm not really going to contribute much to this subject. But it's not just that it has to function on Xbox One X. It has to function on the 2013 base Xbox One.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a huge difference. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I got. See you later, everybody.
It's going to be whack. It's so whack as it is. I mean, they have never done this. They have never focused on archaic, anemic hardware, and also developed for the next oncoming hardware. Like I've never seen them do this unless they were, when they released Master Chief Collection for PC. But arguably, that stuff is the same as Xbox One, or at least relatively close to it. So PC is its own world. I get it, but like when Halo 5 when Halo 5 came out, they didn't release it for 360. It was just for Xbox One. It was just like, hey, finish the fight. With finish the fight with Spartan Locke and all that.
Granted, that game did suck.
It was whack.
And
I played the campaign like in one day, and I was like,
wow,
this campaign is kind of whack. I mean, I was all like excited about Arbiter and but what was that infamous victory preamble? It was like, look, been there, done that, got to do what we got to do. It was like, what the fuck? This writing sucks.
Yeah,
like these people are unrelatable. Who was the guy, the commander who was like screaming at Master Chief, like, I want the chip or something like that. I was like, what the fuck? But no, Halo 5 was whack. But I mean, it did make huge graphical leaps. And Warzone, the original Warzone before Call of Duty took that, is actually really fun, and I do play it time to time.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty good game mechanic that shook things up.
So I will say this about Microsoft and Bungie, kind of in regards to Halo. I think they're handling it the best that they can.
343 Industries.
Oh, sorry, 343, not Bungie. Fuck, right.
I wish.
I wish. So I think they're handling it the best they can, and this is the way I see it. This was supposed to be their big launch game. They revealed it. The backlash was so concentrated, so strong against the graphical style of it that
brute force.
Yeah, that what's his name? Not Major Nelson. Who's Adam? Who's
Phil Spencer.
Phil Spencer. Phil Spencer's like joking about it on Twitter, and he's owning it. He's like, "Oh yeah, this is going to be the new Microsoft mascot." It's like, and then instead of pushing this out in an unfinished state, because 343 got burned so bad by the Master Chief Collection in 2014, shipping unfinished and broken, that they're like, you know what? Let's hold on to it, even though it's going to cost us in the immediate. They're going to take this game and they're going to make it better. And
it's going to build hype. It's going to build hype. Like the amount of hype that at least for the core Xbox quote unquote fanboys, but I just Xbox fans. What do you want to call them? For the Xbox gamers, the power base, whatever. It's going to build so much hype. You got to understand that there's like Microsoft is they're putting all their chips onto this being a success. And if it came out in the way that it was shown at this Xbox conference, it's just it was gonna spell doom. I mean, for the Xbox. I mean, the amount of hype. It's like for this console, it was just gonna fall away. People were probably gonna migrate to the PS5 just because it looks cool, and Sony is the more trusted champion, at least for now. But yeah, I mean, I think this is probably the best move because it's going to build a lot of hype when this console comes out. What's going to suck for the Series X is that is it being called the Series X? It's a Series X, right? Yeah. So the Series X is going to be the most powerful console, but it's going to have a lot of deadness to it. I think it's going to come out pretty with an anemic list of games to play, unless Microsoft can prove themselves with third party applications, and it's just so obvious that they play best on Xbox. But unfortunately, the thing about third party is also usually they cater towards the more base structure, and then they don't take advantage of all the equipment, of all the hardware that the Series X can provide. So that's my concern. But hey, if they can tap into what the Series X can provide, it's just like the PowerCell structure of the PS3. We all know that when games utilize the PS3 PowerCell processors, They looked phenomenal, but nobody knew how to fucking use it. You know, so hopefully, it's going to be more PC centric, and they're going to have all the toolkits that they need to utilize it. I hope they do.
So well, it's interesting you said that, because it also, with the PS3 versus the 360, you said it yourself, like, they tend to go towards the one that's more popular. So the truth was that even though the PS3 was more capable, everybody had Xbox 360s, so they were like, I'll just port my crap to the PS3 and not utilize it. One part was, the logistics of utilizing the cell processor, but the other was just, why am I going to put in all this effort when it's going to sell less anyway? Just port it.
Exactly. And I mean, I wish I had a PS3 growing up, but like, nobody fucking played it. I had one neighborhood friend who played the PS3, but everybody was playing Halo 3. That's the truth of it. Everybody was playing SK8 Skate. They were playing the Skate games. They were playing Gears of War. They were playing Halo, like that. And Call of Duty, of course, is third party, and of course, the ease of Xbox Live and the fluidness of it. Everybody just kind of gravitated towards Xbox, at least from my perspective. What was it, the 7th gen or 6th gen? What generation?
That was 7th gen. That was 7th gen.
Yeah. For the 7th generation, I mean, everybody's talking about Xbox. It was the more cheap console. It could play DVDs. Blu-ray was kind of new technology. Nobody really gave a shit about Blu-ray, even though it was kind of cool. And even though PlayStation's gaming service was free, like, everybody knew which one was the superior when it came down to the experience, and what everybody was playing was Xbox Live, and of course you had Halo 3, and so I just think but the dynamics have shifted so much. Like, I never saw Sony take such a big lead. And they did, though. They did, and you can all blame Don Matrick on that.
Yes, you can.
And listen, I think you're hitting the nail on the head with the strategy that Microsoft is going to have to concentrate on to keep the Series X competitive in this first, launch window in the first year, by leaning into their strengths, which are public
graphical
image. Yeah, graphical capability, public image, the services that the Xbox is going to do, as well as the price. And we haven't gotten a price on the Xbox.
At the time we record this is key. We do not yet know the price of the Xbox Series X. But what I'm guessing you're about to hit on here, Rob, is that Microsoft can afford to lose money on this thing.
They have to.
No problem. Whereas Sony cannot. So I actually think that's why I still maintain that's why we have not heard prices, because Sony has to pick a price that is required for them to be profitable. And I think Microsoft's just sitting there waiting, like, wait till Sony says it, because we can undercut them by 100 or whatever, and who cares? Whereas the reverse is not true.
It's gonna be 600, right?
No,
we don't know. That's the whole point. We don't know.
I think it's going to be 5.
Okay.
I think Microsoft is so willing to get out in front and say, we could eat the cost. It's not about the platform, it's about the service. They're going to be pushing Xbox Live, they're going to be pushing the Game Pass, they're going to be pushing xCloud, and it's all about getting that platform into people's homes. And it doesn't matter that the Xbox, doesn't have games. It's going to be about the service.
And there's going to be, and there's that hype also. There's the hype with Infinite. Yeah. There was that hype with Master Chief Collection, which was a total fucking dud, and Halo 5, which was mediocre at best. They really have to come swinging with Halo Infinite. There has to be good marketing, and it has to captivate audiences. It has to be a flagship game. It has to, or there's no success. There's no future for Xbox. If this game is to be bunk, if it's to be a total failure or to be mediocre, it has to strive away from mediocrity, and it has to excel. It has to, or there's no hope in Halo, and there's of course no hope for Xbox. The best you're going to do is going to be a PC app. I hope that doesn't happen, because I like gaming consoles. I like how relatively easy it is to use gaming consoles. That's why I don't fuck around with with Steam and Origin and all these separate desktop applications. What a fucking headache that is. You know, they're supposed games are supposed to be easy to use. It's not supposed to be a headache. Yes, day one when you get it out of the box and you're signing up for all this shit. Like, yeah, it's never going to be fucking easy. You're going to have to get your dad or some, you know, you're going to have to ask your brother, you know, if you're a kid, right?
You are clearly much younger than us because we're like dinosaurs, man. We got a Genesis and we opened it up. It's like you just put the game in and that was it. You were playing.
Oh
by the
my
time,
God.
By the time you
I'm
had
so
to do
jealous.
intelligent setup, like the 360, we were in college. So it was like, whatever. This is weird, but we'll do it.
The game consoles, they grew with you, basically, or at least the technology did, or, you know, it got so complex. Remember the PlayStation 2? Remember the PlayStation 1? You got that fucker out of the box, you turned it on, and you put in the game, and then you saw the logo, and you gamed away. Hopefully you had a memory card, right? Didn't the memory card come with it, or you had to buy
No,
it?
Yeah, of course.
it had to buy it separate.
Okay, yeah. Well, okay, so there were still, like, hang-ups as far as peripheral devices, but still, you got it out of the box, you at least knew the basic things that you needed for it, and it was easy. Like, you didn't have to connect to the internet, you didn't have to download software updates, you didn't have to have an account, you know, and everything is more complex. We all play the original consoles because we like the simplicity of it all. Hopefully they can make it streamlined. Xbox, Microsoft accounts. I mean, we all know the Skype, the setting up Skype was atrocious, but you know, because Microsoft accounts, you know, they're always going to be a burden. But if they can make it streamlined and continue to make it streamlined, just like Xbox Live still is technically, you know, if you have auto sign in, thank God, they can get away with it. They you know, there's still hope for consoles. At least on the PS4 and Xbox side. Nintendo is doing their own thing. You know, Nintendo friend accounts, friend codes.
But it is pretty user friendly out of the box, though. There's very little like mandatory setup that you need to do with the Switch, though.
Not so much for me but that's because I knew that I wanted online access. So because of that, I knew I had to I put in my debit card information, and you know I had to create the Nintendo Gold account, or no, a family account, because my wife just had to play Animal Crossing. So, yeah.
No, but I think this Adam was kind of alluding to it earlier. I think this kind of ties well into kind of what Microsoft needs to do to be competitive in this,
which would be the next
generation.
subject.
Yeah, which would be. Backwards compatibility, and you wanted to talk about its importance in the gaming landscape.
Right. Backwards compatibility is very important. Man, it sounds like a Joe Biden speech right now. Let's see. Oh, Joe, you know the thing. Anyway. No, but backwards compatibility is really important to the gaming scene because it. Where do you start off? I mean, you got the whole list, you've got the whole access to a library out of the box, and when you don't, you have to like go back to the original console. Imagine if the PS5 comes out, and is it confirmed that it's not going to be backwards compatible with PS4 or all PS4 games?
PS5 is PS4 compatible. We don't know exactly how many. That number has varied. It's more or less confirmed it will not do PS1, PS2, or PS3, which makes sense since they're doing an all-digital version. And as soon as they announced that, I said that in a video. I was like, that just kills that possibility. And people are like, no, it doesn't, because you can still download the games. I'm like, if you're downloading PS5 builds of backwards or emulated titles, you're rebuying them. That's not backwards compatibility. Those are two completely different concepts.
No, exactly. Man. If Sony screws up on this, it will be clear that Xbox is the console for gamers.
Let's make it clear to other people as well that we understand that the Xbox Series X will be 100% compatible with Xbox One games, sans the Kinect titles. It will be compatible with all currently compatible Xbox 360 games, as well as we're to understand more of them. We just don't know how many. And the same goes for original Xbox. The 40 games that are already compatible will be there, plus more, but again, we don't know how many. So that gives you 4 generations. Just not every title ever released, but a massive amount of stuff will work out of the box the day you get it. And presumably, and you mentioned this before, with streamlined accounts and everything, presumably, I'm not a digital gamer at all, but presumably if I were to log into my current Xbox account on my Xbox One over to the Series X, it would just take all my digital titles with it. And I'm guessing if that's easy enough, that's going to massively appeal to people.
Does anybody know? Does anybody have a current progress report on the games for gold list? Like, what's going on? Are those going to be grandfathered in to the downloaded account?
We discussed that not last month. I think the month before on the podcast.
No, it was last month. It was last month.
And it was kind of speculation, whether or not those things were going to migrate, or if all of them would, or some of them would, or
Essentially, they haven't really updated on that, but we assume so, but we don't really know.
Good, because I remember I downloaded Halo. I was able to play Halo 5 Guardians off the disc. I remember this. I played it off the disc. I technically do own it. And then it came out for Xbox Live Gold. And then so there was no excuse to not play Halo 5 if you have a game for gold, if you have Xbox Live. And then so I clicked get, I automatically got it because I'm with Gold. So the idea of oh, you don't have Halo 5 Guardians, you don't have the disc inside your console, therefore it won't play. What? That would have been totally bonked to me. That would have been a massive fail. But it looks like it's still working.
I hate to correct you on that, but I think that game in particular was never an Xbox Live Gold game. I think it was only Gold free on certain weekends. And so if you acquired it during that time, then it would work on those specific dates, but there would be most of the time it would not function.
Oh, I thought people were able to play for free, forever.
You can, no. You can the ones that every month they put out 2 Xbox One games and 2 Xbox 360 games that are tied into your Gold account that you retain the rights to at least until your subscription goes away. In the case of Xbox 360, you keep the rights essentially indefinitely until your hard drive dies. But they have occasionally these things where it's we want to keep everybody inside for, because of the current pandemic, or they're just hey, it's Xbox Live Crazy Gold Weekend. We're celebrating the anniversary of whatever. And in those cases, they'll give away an extra game, usually something they wholly own, like Halo or Forza or whatever. And they do it, but it only applies for the weekend that it's actually active. And then as soon as that time frame is over, it goes back to being a game that you don't own, that you've downloaded, and it just says you need the disc.
Okay, because maybe I did. Wow, then that must mean I bought it twice. Ugh, I'm dumb.
I don't remember Halo 5 ever being the free game. I could be wrong. I don't have that information in front of me. As we established, I'm not a fan of that franchise, but I would think that would have been wow, that would have been a big deal, as opposed to to the point where I can't remember it. That seems like it probably didn't happen. Usually they give away kind of littler games, stuff that's not nearly as AAA major, because that's where they make their money.
Yeah, imagine if they did do that. Oh my god.
Well, they do.
Totally could.
I mean, they effectively do. It's called Xbox Game Pass. You pay your same amount of money, a month. What is it $20 or I don't have a Game Pass, but whatever it is, you pay your amount of money, and then you go on, and then it's effectively a Netflix service for Xbox, dating all the way back to the original Xbox, so you could play your Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic or something. And then you could play Halo 5, and it's streaming. You don't own the copy; it's tied to your account. But I mean, you still get those AAA games. And I know a lot of people don't like that Microsoft puts their big AAA games immediately on Game Pass. It's but that's like what I mentioned before. It's about putting the Game Pass and Xbox Live in as many homes as possible, whether that's on PC, whether that's on Xbox, whether that's via Game Pass. It's all about the same. It's all about the exposure. So, that's if you are looking for something like that, Game Pass is probably what you'd be looking for.
Right. I wanted to ask both of y'all, but specifically Adam, how do you feel about the discless PlayStation 5?
Well, like I kind of said in my video, like I did an entire video about this actually, but kind of the short version is just beware of what that means, because those two things, a all digital version and a disc version, cannot coexist indefinitely. The disc version will be more expensive, but it comes inherently with some benefits. You know, you have the choice, the right of used content, the benefits of Blu-ray, DVD, what have you. But eventually their internal marketing, their internal teams will tell them, hey, one version is selling more than the other. We need to cut the other one. Cutting out the digital one is relatively an easy process, because the one that uses discs can still function as an all digital one, regardless if you want it or not. You can just download your games and never have to use the disk drive. The reverse of that is not true. If they find out like 90% of sales are coming from the disc or the digital only version, the disc only version will probably be discontinued, and they'll probably make an agreement to just stop producing discs. And then the way they get away with that from a corporate level is like, we're making some changes. We apologize for this. We're going to give you $50 worth of PSN credit, and we hope you can enjoy your continued PlayStation experience. Like, it's the same type of thing that happened when HD DVD got discontinued. They just started sending out gift cards like of $50 to everybody who bought one. It's like, it's not really a solution. So I am in no way, shape, or form a fan of the digital edition. I think it's really a silly thing to forego your rights as a customer just to do it. I mean, essentially, you're doing it for the potential benefit of the convenience factor. That's primarily why people like it, because you can just get the game without having to leave your home, and I understand that. But you are abandoning your right of ownership. You're abandoning the benefits that come tied to an actual disc-based product. You're also essentially foregoing your right of choice. A disc-based version is not a monopoly. You can buy it from the actual manufacturer. You could buy one from Sony or Microsoft, but you can buy it from Best Buy. You can buy it from Target, from Walmart. You can buy it from GameStop. You can buy it from a friend. You can buy it from Facebook groups or whatever, conventions, events, what have you. You have the choice of where to get the game, and therefore the price goes with that. PCs are different than consoles. PCs, as you mentioned before, you have choice like Epic, Steam, GOG, Origin, what have you. They compete with each other. Therefore, their prices must reflect that. Sony and Microsoft are the sole distributor of their own distribution, of their own game service. Meaning, if I have an all digital edition of the PlayStation 5, I am 100% forced to make all of my financial purchases through Sony, meaning they 100% dictate the price therein. That is not beneficial to me as the customer. And so, no, I would not personally abandon my rights in any way, shape, or form to get the convenience of not having to leave my house. Because the other thing is, there's this service called shipping. So if you don't want to leave your house, you can have something mailed to you. Yes, maybe that takes an extra day or whatever, but the small inconvenience is far outweighed by the benefits you acquire as a customer.
Will it be will the discless PlayStation 5 be an as big as failure as the Xbox One Kinect? Is it going to dissipate into the wayside, or
I think a bigger comparison would be the digital only consoles that have come before it, whether that's the PSP Go or the Xbox One S all digital.
The Canadian Wii.
Well, no, that was
that was offline. Yeah. That was just offline.
Yeah,
think there's also the ill-fated Mad Catz OnLive and the Ouya and all these other things that did not pan out. But this is not the same as those things.
There was not the infrastructure and the storage capacities to fully utilize those systems back when they were released, and you could say even the Series X the Xbox One S all digital that came out was like just a digital version of a console that was not like as successful as its competitors already, so nobody was going to go out and buy that,
and it had been out at that point for
right?
like 6 years. Yeah, I think they discontinued that one as well. That one had been out for like 6 years at that point, so you would be an idiot to buy it because you're like, oh cool, I have to buy all my games brand new for $59.99 through the Xbox Live store, even though I bought this at a GameStop that has the same game for $4.99 or whatever. You just eliminate your rights. Like, why are you doing that? But in that case, that one made sense because it's so old. That's the difference, though. The PS5 is not an obscure console. It is not an early online service, nor is it an old console trying to be grandfathered itself into an all-digital edition. This is an internal war between digital and physical that's going to happen for both Microsoft and Sony. They're essentially competing with themselves, and it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out.
I think it's very likely that it will. I mean, it just is the wrong move to do, but I personally think, to me, I would place money on it that it's just going to fall to the wayside. I think everybody's going to still want the disc-based platform and the cheaper PlayStation 5, the discless PlayStation 5. Everybody's going to know by word of mouth that that it's not the version to get, and I think it's going to really split the fan base. And it's like with Android, it's the fragmentation of the operating systems. It's going to split the fan base. People are going to lose faith in Sony to an extent, and it's just going to be simpler maybe to buy the Xbox One X, perhaps, or no, the Xbox Series.
No,
X.
it has a physical and digital edition as well. They're both doing this.
Wait, they're both doing that?
Yeah, the Xbox Series S.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know how I feel about that.
And listen, I hope I'm wrong, but I think Adam's probably with me. It's like I'm kind of being pretty pessimistic about that, and I think that the way Adam described it, like if any one of them is going to fall off, it's going to be the disc, the one with the disc drive, because of production costs, because of the shifting desires of the consumer base towards digital for a number of years now. And listen, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think that's going to be the case, unfortunately.
You also can look at the designs and just tell where their heart was. The PS5 looks better as an all-digital edition. It's more uniform. With the disc, it just looks like it has some sort of tumorous growth coming out of it. The Xbox is kind of the same deal. Like the S version, the digital edition, is a nice slim cube. It almost looks like a GameCube. But the X is like this hulking tower that just is existing just because it has to have a disc drive. So I don't think that their heart was necessarily in the disc versions. We know that isn't just based on their general attitude. And why would it be? If it's that beneficial for them to have digital editions, then it's probably something you should avoid, because what they want you to do is not have that choice. If I owned a product I was trying to sell to both of you, it is in my interest if I'm the only person who can sell you that product. But if I have to have 10 other people who can sell you the same product, I'm not always going to get your money. So it's in my interest to get rid of those other people so that you have to buy from me. That's essentially what an all-digital edition is. They're eliminating their own competition.
Yeah, I think though, if we're talking about the general attitudes, though, I think the mainstream gaming atmosphere, the game power base, I think everybody's going to shift towards the disc-based platforms, or at least it's going to be. It's going to stick around. It's going to stick around, and it'll probably be. This will probably be. Hopefully, it's not going to be, but it might be the last generation. But I really do think that because of the general gaming attitudes within the power bases, I think most of the bulk is going to be towards the more disc-based, beefier. So it would seem like they're beefier hardware-capable devices. I think it's going to shift towards that. I could be wrong. We could all, our hopes and dreams could be wrong and diminished. We'll just have to see. But I honestly thought the discless was only going to be for Sony. But man, apparently they're both going to do that. That's a huge disappointment.
I mean, here's the thing. They've been trying to, especially Microsoft, has been trying to condition users to get used to digital. That's why Game Pass is a thing. There's no way they're really making money on that. They're just trying to condition you to be like, hey man, look how easy it is. You can play everything at home without having to do anything. And look, it's all just there. The second that you have no choice, once there is no competition, I promise you things like Game Pass go up in price, because that's how monopolies are.
Yeah. And listen, like there are many reasons why GameStop is a sinking ship and is going to go out of business probably within the next year or two. But
they had to have been accelerated by the current situation.
Yeah, but the biggest reason of them all is the fact that people are buying digital more and more. And I think I haven't seen the kind of a pie chart of sales between digital and physical from the past few months. But digital outweighs physical by a country mile. Like, it's shocking, and they're like that, the disparity between how many people are buying more digital things than physical.
Well, if that happens, I mean, you're basically just buying PCs with the brand logo on it.
Yep. Nobody's arguing with you.
No, nobody's arguing with you. In fact, we're saying it's actually worse because you don't even like, at least PC gaming, you have the choice of multiple distribution platforms because nobody owns PC as a brand. It's not a brand. It's just a thing. But PlayStation is a brand, and it only has one way to acquire games on a digital unit, other than piracy methods, I suppose. But here's the thing. We're being pessimistic, but we're also trying to be somewhat pragmatic about all this. Digital is inevitable. It will win at some point. The question is when. Does it happen in this generation, or do we end this generation by looking back at those digital versions being like, wow, wasn't it weird when they did the Kinect 2.0 or 3.0 there? I'm not seeing that. I actually kind of believed initially that physical would probably hold out until the generation after this, and I'm going to say it now, because of the pandemic, I think we've accelerated that process because everyone is stuck at home and everyone is just trying to get on board with digital stuff more and more and more and more. I do believe, I'm saying it now, this is the last generation that uses physical media, and because of that, I'm also inclined to believe that at some point through this generation cycle, both of these consoles will eliminate their physical editions. The only possible exception to this is whatever Nintendo does next.
I think if that's going to be the case, I think Nintendo has a lot of potential to rise from this what do you call it? I don't want to call it a civil war, but this debacle.
Format
I think
war.
I do think it's somewhat of a platform war. But I think Nintendo has a lot of persuasion when it comes to video games, and it's going to be all for their taking. If you can still buy physical games, and you can download your games, and you have the ability to use whatever the SanDisk memory cards, right, that are kind of proprietary to the Nintendo Switch. But if they can get away with that with the next coming up Nintendo Switch, I think they're still gonna be relevant. They're still holding on to something, and it's maybe call me crazy here, but maybe it's possible that the core gaming audience switches over to the Nintendo Switch. If they're just going to dissipate into mega PCs, if they're just going to become PCs with brand logos on them, I think maybe the way that the gaming culture is going to gravitate towards is going to be very appealing to invest in Nintendo.
In essence, I agree with you because I think that Nintendo will likely hold out for a few reasons. One, they're kind of old school in that way. Second, they understand. If you just have to look at this past week at the time we record this when it comes to that Mario announcement. They're like, oh, we're doing the Mario All-Stars 3D collection. You can buy it now physically, or you can get the digital edition. For some reason, the digital edition expires in 6 months and you can't reacquire it. Nintendo is not on board with digital content. They're just not there yet. And as you mentioned earlier, their whole concept of online friend codes and all that stuff, when they're trying to placate to children, they are not going to have nearly as streamlined and open of a platform as Sony and Microsoft are willing to do. So I do believe there is some logic that eventually Nintendo will kind of become a two-tier thing. One will be like kids, and the other will be man children like us who are like, I want my physical toys. But I do think eventually, if not within just a few years, Sony and Microsoft are like, we're done with physical. It just doesn't work for us anymore. Sony, I think, is more likely to cling on longer, only because they're a Japanese company, and in Japan, physical media is considered still very, very relevant. Like to the point where you will regularly still see people reading newspapers and everything. Like it's not because they don't have the tech, it's just the way they prefer to do things. Microsoft, an American company, not burdened by that social issue. So I think the only reason Microsoft is even doing physical at all is just because Sony is. I just can't see them caring beyond that point.
I thought Microsoft was still doing it. Again, this was my preconceived notion when I didn't even know about this this model that's going to be stripped away with the physical feature. I thought they were kind of like placating towards the gamers, towards the main gaming core audience. I thought that's why they were going to be the ones that were like, no, only disc based. But apparently that's out of the wayside.
They have the exact same motives as Sony, and they have the same thought processes. Yeah.
Yeah, the only advantage for them, if we actually swing it right back around to what we were supposed to be talking about, is that because of their disk drive, they actually have access to 4 generations of Xbox content right off of a disc. So that's the one big advantage they have, as you say, to kind of appeal to that era of gamers, is the disk drive has that nostalgia vibe for, hey, I can stick in an original Xbox game I bought 20 years ago and it's going to work on this thing. Awesome. But again, they're trying to convince you that, yeah, you could do that, but you can also just download, Star Wars Battlefront. You don't need to do it this way. Hell, you can play it on Xbox Game Pass and pay $1 a month. Like, that's the goal.
It's really interesting. Because, it's just like Nintendo, man. It's like their way of doing it is so different, and the technology is just placating to them so much. I mean, the fact that you could have a console-like experience, take it on the go, is revolutionary. They're not doing this sort of thing where it's a PC sort of thing. Like it's gonna be a portable mobile gaming experience, and this next Nintendo Switch that they're gonna be coming out with, what is it even gonna be called? I don't even know. I mean, this, depending on how well the graphics are, if it's like a PlayStation 4 that's portable, yeah, they're gonna be a little behind, but if you could imagine being able to buy physical media, being able to take your physical media games that are just like AAA experiences, taking them on the go, I mean, there's going to be a huge, dramatic shift. The Nintendo of the Wii U era is going to be dissipated. I mean, it's going to vanish. I think realistically, you're going to have those weeaboo sort of attractions with the Nintendo Switch. Everybody likes their animes. I get it, but you're also, if they can get Battlefield up and running on Nintendo Switch, if they can adhere to these third-party game companies, it's, I mean, who knows? Like,
you're essentially describing Nintendo's business model going all the way back to the Wii, which is have anemic hardware, try to use it to appeal to a different audience, get third parties on board, and just kind of tell them, hey, it's not as capable as the current thing, but you can port all your old crap over to it and resell the same stuff. They've literally done that 3 generations in a row.
But here's the thing is, Nintendo's right now the only kind of game in town when it comes to console quality games on a portable system. That's not going to be the case soon. If you look back at Xbox's E3 presentation from 2019, their biggest thing that they were hyping up is called xCloud. xCloud is going to be basically console gaming on computer, on phone, on tablets, using Xbox Live, using Xbox Game Pass, and then when you couple that with the growing spread of 5G internet speeds for cell phones, you're going to be able to play Halo Infinite on your phone, on your tablet, with a Xbox Elite controller, however you want to do it. But you're going to be doing it digitally, and you're going That's the big crux of it. So, with gaming shifting towards a digital future, and with the popularity of the Switch as a portable system, Microsoft is well positioned to be able to use xCloud gaming to kind of encroach on the Switch's dominance of that.
Oh, that's so accurate, because the huge benefit they have there is like, hey man, you've already got a phone. All you have to do is install our app and install your Xbox account and just
pay your monthly service,
pay your
and then
$1 monthly Game Pass subscription, and boom, you've got everything now on the hardware. We're not even trying to sell you hardware. We're trying to sell you a subscription, a digital subscription. So no, that's not the company to bank on physical media for.
Yeah, and everything is getting so much more complicated and so much more busier. We think that this pandemic is going to push them to this sort of direction, but also people might not have the money to cash out for these streaming services. People might want to stick to tradition. For all we know, it's too soon to tell. But this pandemic sure is. It is going to have an effect on the market for sure. And I just don't know. I don't know, as a gaming layman, so to speak, as a millennial, or whatever you want to call me.
No, we're millennials.
Yeah, we're all right. I mean,
when were you born?
97.
Gen Z.
Yeah, you're a millennial.
No,
Gen
Z.
You're not I get millennial and Gen Z.
That's Gen Z.
83. No. He's millennial. He would have to have been born post 2003 to be a Gen Z.
No.
Yeah, because I grew up.
He would have to be. Millennials are 83.
I'm gonna look this bitch up.
Go ahead. Millennials are 83 to 2003. Gen Z is 2003 to 2023. After that, we don't know. I guess they'll probably call them COVID babies.
No, it's 81 to 96 is millennial.
81? No, bull. It's
81 to 96 is according to the PewResearch.org.
So I'm part of that generation where they don't even know what to call my generation, right?
That'd be Gen X too, the forgotten generation.
Dumb millennials like Adam don't know what to call your generation.
Dude, I'm telling you, it's the third. It's every 20 years going on the third. It's defined by the greatest generation. Then there's the boomers. Then there's the Gen X. Then there was the millennials. Then there's Gen Z. And then after that, we don't know. I'm telling you, they're going to be called something like COVID babies.
Remember when we were talking about backwards compatibility?
Oh yeah, that was a thing. So we can go back to our millennial era games.
I wanted to go back to that, and I wanted to hammer home this idea that the hardware is constantly changing, and I think that there's going to, how the nostalgia buzz is with when people grow up and people become nostalgia for these older consoles, and then all of a sudden their prices fluctuate. I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of people within my age bracket that are going to dissipate, or they're going to turn off from the video game scene. It's possible, because things are being so complicated. We're not able to adjust. Maybe we are, but I think what's going to happen is a lot of people are just going to stick to maybe the 360 that they still have, maybe the PS3 that's backwards compatible. They're going to stick to the PS2 that they still have, and they're just going to stick to that sort of gaming field. And then everybody else, all the Gen Zs, all the COVID babies, they're going to be able to adapt to all this, basically the PCs with brand logos on them. And maybe they will sort of dictate where the gaming scene goes. And they'll brag about, ooh, I got my God of War, ooh, I got my Guardians, I got my whatever, I got my AAA experience. Ooh, like, okay, yeah, whatever. Okay, Zoomer. Whatever. But we're just gonna chill with our PS3s. We're gonna chill with our PS2s. We're gonna chill with our Xbox originals and 360s and maybe our Xbox One, whatever. But after this, I don't know if we can still survive and cope with today's gaming scene. I was excited towards the Xbox Series X, but this might be the last console that I'm genuinely interested in. I mean, after this, I don't know if I really want to stick around and see a discless alternative to gaming. I don't know if I really want to partake in that. I mean, it's going to be a revolution. It's going to be a total change in tide, and I just don't know if I'm going to stick around to see that horizon. You know, not saying I'm going to kill myself, but but I'm so turned off from it. Really,
it's kind of a theme. It's kind of a thematic point. It's the importance of backwards compatibility, which is importance of the past, and for you, the all-digital future is not the past, and I'm with you on that. I would not support any sort of all-digital console. That's the time where I bow out. I'm like, I got more consoles and games than I can ever realistically play. I can hit the Casio Loopy for the rest of my life. I'm good. So I don't need the Xbox whatever, digital beyond Xbox Series X.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever buy something that's discless. I just, but that's me, and maybe I'm becoming the generation that I made fun of, the okay boomer, right? Like not being able to change to the growing new technologies and whatnot. But I think I've accumulated enough of a collection. I can't play that collection on the oncoming new technology, and I'm out. Maybe I'll adjust the Nintendo. Maybe I'll adjust the PC. But as far as that goes, I'm not interested in the exclusives if I can't buy it physically, if I can't look at the artwork, if I can't grab my hands onto it. I don't think I can adjust to it, and maybe that's the time. And maybe that's showing my maturity. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. But it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth, just as a consumer.
Yep. Hey man, I'm with you on that, and I think that's a great place to kind of wrap this up here. So. Oliver, you're not Oliver, the other one's Oliver. Levy, I want to thank you very much for joining us. I also want to give shout outs to Oliver again, who joined us as well, and another round of shout outs to the Patreon backers. It was Caleb Bravo, Joseph Tamburino, Luis Bonilla, Michael Kelly, and Trey Wagner. Rob, I guess you can thank you as well for showing up.
So
yeah,
nice.
You're all right. Yeah. Leafy, any final thoughts before next time?
I think I've said everything that I've wanted to say and demonstrate. I don't think there's much I can leave off other than, wow, that was such a black pill for me to leave off on.
Just say fuck Konami.
Smash that like button.
Yes. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and share this to all your friends. No, Adam Kralik, you're a great YouTuber. Your content is always wholesome. I just want to tell you to keep it up. Thank you so much for what you generate. It's awesome.
No, thanks, dude. Thanks for being part of it. You are now in the pantheon of people who have joined along with Rob, and you're better than Rob, so that's good too.
Yeah, totally.
Like that's actually why I keep Rob around, so that everyone who comes on is not the worst guest. Like that way.
Wow.
No, Rob's fine.
He also doesn't like editing these podcasts.
That too.
Jeez, he's calling you out. He's calling you out, man. Hey, if you need a new, new co-host, a
replacement Rob.
I'll let you know. It's probably going to be sooner rather than later.
Oh,
yeah, the way we're going.
The drama continues.
It does. It unfolds live, everybody. But thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Again, this podcast is early access via Patreon, along with all my videos. And I want to thank again everybody involved: Leafy Poo, Oliver, Rob, Caleb, Joseph, Luis, Michael, Trey, and all of you for watching and listening. And that's it. Please like, comment, subscribe. Check out the social media stuff in the description, and we'll see you all later.